The girl is an empress. Her life was incredibly difficult, which invariably affected everything around her. Name Dante Renatus, age unknown. Things didn't start out as well as we would have liked. The girl never had a family because she was left completely alone to the mercy of fate, without the right to choose. The beauty's father was the crown prince, who turned out to be a scoundrel. The young man was not going to take responsibility for his promiscuity, which happened not so long ago. After his departure, the virgin's mother could not make ends meet, constantly complaining about life. A woman working as a musician abandoned her daughter in another city, hoping that it would be much easier and better. As a result, the girl grew up on her own, constantly wandering among the beggars and street children of the city, who, just like her, did not know where to go. My childhood was indeed extremely difficult. Renatus had to eat discarded food, and then, after she grew up, she could steal from the markets to obtain food for the following days. The year the main character turned 12, everything changed dramatically. A turning point came in her life that managed to change everything for her. The little girl was interested in one academy, which she would never have been able to get into anyway. She dreamed about it, but in the end all she could do was come to the gate every day and watch the classes. The man, who apparently was the owner, notices the girl, leans over and asks if she also wants to try to pick up a sword at least once. Judging by her interest, she could do everything in the best possible way. The beauty was too fascinated by what was offered to her. It seemed that wishes would be fulfilled, but getting it was not so easy. Emptying her pockets, the brunette notices the fact that she has no money at all due to the fact that she lives on the street. The teacher knew this, of course. Smiling, the teacher holds out a wooden sword. Nobody knows how things will turn out. If Dante succeeds, she might even be accepted as a student to further teach her art. Accepting the little thing, the maiden sighs. For some reason, there is confidence that the old master said this as a joke, but if you can't try, then it's impossible to know anything in advance. In order for everything to really be a joke, all she had to do was get involved, which the heroine happily did, following every instruction given to her. Everything really turned out for the best. The beauty's abilities turned out to be amazing, blinding everyone around her. She managed to defeat everyone on the battlefield. Realizing that something is wrong, the brunette turns to the master in horror. She doesn't know how this happened because she didn't even intend to reveal her talents. The man was serious, so placing his hand on the child's shoulder, he asked if the lady would like to truly learn the art of the sword. The only thoughts running through my head were that the nasty life on the street was over. Squatting down, the teacher asks the student's name, to which he receives an answer stating that she does not have a name. This turned out to be no problem. The guy decided that from that moment on, he would call his companion Dante. Now it was necessary that if someone asked who the master of this miracle was, she would say the right name. After that very day, the brunette became the adopted daughter of an old art teacher who, showing kindness, decided to take this important and big step. Then everything went exactly in the direction everyone expected. The teacher taught the girl with all his might, putting all his efforts into it, and she in turn tried her best. At first glance, the situation may seem sweet, but in the end, the days of grueling training were no different from the testing and bullying that had always plagued the poor fellow before. Dante thought about running away, but decided not to risk it. Overcoming all the trials was much easier than fighting every day with hunger and cold, which the ladies intended to drag into their tenacious clutches. The year the main character turned 19, the old master died from how hard he had trained all his life. This was quite expected. The entire inheritance went to his own children, but the old man did not leave a penny to his adopted daughter at all, probably considering that she did not even really deserve it. The man really pissed off the lady by doing everything exactly in this way, hoping that he would get away with everything safely. At the end of his life, only the princess looked after him, when the rest did not care. After everything that happened, money became the most important thing in the heroine's life. She researched where she could get them, and one day she came across an advertisement for participants in gladiator fights. There seemed to be just an endless stream of people wishing to come, which replaced the crowd. Everyone around who was able to fight was interested in easy money. The beauty, of course, was one of them, the very first person who was able to sign up for training, and then for a real fight with bets. The girl promised herself that she would never return to the same terrible life that she had to endure before. Money became the best thing that could replace everyone and everything around. With such an outstanding attitude, Renatus managed to accomplish many great things. One of them was participation in gladiator fights, where the maiden invariably defeated her opponents one after another. The next thing the brunette went on was a hunt for monsters, which also fell at her hands, helping the heroine get a good monetary reward. Everything continued as best as possible, because the lady also managed to join a detachment of mercenaries and take part in the war, performing many incredible feats that were certainly imprinted in the history of mankind. The most important was the last act. Dante managed to seal the golden dragon in a cave, thereby saving the inhabitants of the planet from eternal destruction from the dragon. At this rate, the girl realized that everything was getting better after she became known as more than just a heroine. The titles rained down like hail in the middle of the day. Offers really poured in, just like a mountain. Many offered to marry their sons or themselves. Some asked to work with them, even offering to pay more than their competitors, and some just wanted the lady to shake their hand. The girl did not expect gratitude because she did it all just to earn money for food and survival. However, fans followed her everywhere. At this rate, it was possible to create your own country. It seems that not only the main character, who wanted to make this her feature, thought in this way. The emperor apparently saw something in the girl who was able to achieve too much. The year the lady turned 23, the king, who was the father, invited her to the palace for important negotiations. It was clear from him that he was extremely serious, hoping to gain some benefit from this. The man promised to allow his daughter to bear the surname Renatus, as well as become a member of the imperial family, only on one condition, which will be announced later. Initially, the beauty did not hope for gratitude, but she kept the sign of the dominant family, which seemed like an ordinary trinket. After becoming popular, Dante revealed the secret of her origin. I should have thrown the pendant away from the very beginning. Nothing could be changed, so all I could do was stand there and think about what to say. The heroine wanted a reward that could somehow help her get back on her feet. The father, who clearly did not expect such a turn of events, seemed speechless. This was the first time such ignorance was shown to him, which he actually noticed. As it was known, the emperor was also a lover of different girls, so as a result, 15 children were born from different ladies. The quantity is huge, but the quality is average, which made the man remain dissatisfied. When the young man learned that one of his daughters, growing up on the street, had achieved great things by becoming a hero of the continent, he probably started dancing, lifting his spirits. The girl needed to think carefully before making any decision about the proposal, even if, according to the king, it was a great honor. The heroine still wanted to receive some kind of reward. She already had a rough list in her head, so when the man asked what she needed, everything became as simple as shelling pears. The emperor seemed mad at the moment because he thought that the ragged woman would want him to call her crown princess. The choice was already difficult, so adding another child didn't make it any easier. Smiling, the brunette notes the fact that she is not at all interested in the throne. Her other siblings have a much better chance, so it's worth leaving it for them. To begin with, the woman would like to receive separate lands and an estate, as well as a huge amount of coins. The next condition was to receive 10 horses and soldiers. His Majesty, after all, is the girl's father, so she names an extremely low price, despite how much she wants. It is necessary to calculate the profit in order to give the opportunity to borrow the name of the imperial couple. Bringing his finger very close to the man's nose, Dante reminds him in a quiet, threatening tone that he needs to quickly choose what to do. Otherwise, the deal will be cancelled. Until now, in her dreams, the girl dreams of a face that tries to swallow curses, slowly agreeing, trying as much as possible not to stutter from indignation. Everything was decided, so the lady agreed to lend her name. This is exactly how a deal was concluded that will remain in history for a long time, where, of course, the support of the Renatus family was not indicated. It so happened that if the father had refused, the lady would still have lived a wonderful life. But the man had no choice, because over time, their family began to lose popular support. No one simply could ignore such a drama, because the brunette was the best swordswoman at the peak of her popularity, who suddenly turned out to be from the imperial family. The woman had done her job, so she hoped that everything would go much more smoothly, because she would no longer have to think about food and clothing, But everything was not that simple. It seems that the existence of a person like her was a thorn in the side of the brothers and sisters, who did absolutely nothing all day long, relaxing. The girl gave up the throne in order to live in peace, but it seems that this did not work. Every second Monday, new hired killers came for her soul. This incredibly irritated the young lady, who did not understand at all the meaning of such behavior. They simply drove Dante crazy with their pathetic attempts. The beauty got angry, and in the end, made it so that she became the empress, pushing all her relatives, who became quite angry shortly before this happened. This is how a girl who was unremarkable, being a street child, became the best, remaining in order to live a luxurious and wonderful life, which seemed to be the best choice for her. This story is like a story with a happy ending. Such a life definitely resembled a happy ballad, which remained in the hearts of readers, even if the girl died at 33, ending her reign. It was a good life given by God. Every moment of her life, the lady remained free and fierce, overcoming all difficulties, gaining a lot of experience along the way and taking possession of everything she wanted. The beauty believed that she had reached her peak, because it seemed that no one had ever been able to live such bright moments created with their own hands. Even if Dante began to live again, she is sure that she could not be even more diligent than then, even though everything was just beginning. There was no residue left in my soul because of unpleasant things. Having done everything she wanted, the heroine decided to try to go into oblivion, realizing that she would never be forgotten. But 500 years later, an incredible thing happened. Renatus was reborn as a young girl with silver hair and beautiful blue eyes. The woman did not count on such a turn of events, hoping to finally rest properly. The blonde's new name is Helena Fresca. She changed the whole reality, completely different from her past self. The baby is the precious daughter of the Duchy of Heiress, receiving the love of the entire family and subjects. Life seemed somehow interesting, given the new circumstances, despite the fact that one single fact spoiled the whole existence. The beauty fully remembered all the details from her past life, trying not to go crazy, just like an adult. The heroine heard this phrase more often than anything else over the last 10 years of her second life after rebirth. She had time to get used to it. The baby never caused absolutely any trouble, remaining a much quieter and smarter child among the rest of her peers who behaved their age. In addition to other well-deserved regalia, the blonde herself taught herself to read, write, and ride horses. The difficult tasks that were a challenge even for some twice her age became special fun. This is how everyone began to consider Helena the pride of the family. She seemed like a wonderful heiress and daughter who tried to help everyone around her. A girl should be the best, but sometimes the character of an independent warrior comes out on its own. Sitting on the bed, Fresca sighs, talking about how bored she is. Whatever the girl did, she got bored very quickly, stopping her halfway. Nothing seemed to make sense anymore, which made Helena's father and mother terrified. Leaning closer to his daughter, Dad reminds her that it is better for small children not to think about something so strange. They should enjoy time with their family. The couple, as usual, overreacted, suggesting they look for something interesting that could show up at any moment. If the beauty wanted to do something, she could always turn to her parents for help. This speech did not evoke any tenderness or emotion in the body of the young lady, who looked at everything from an extremely skeptical point of view. She didn't want to do anything. The girl still felt incredibly awkward because of the boundless love that was given to her despite what happened in her past life. Sometimes I wanted to ask the couple to leave me alone, but in my head, the lady understood that they would be even more upset. Squatting down next to her daughter, the mother tries to convince the baby to hold her head up. Life is long, and during this time you can try a lot. No one leaves in order, however. Remembering the age at which the heroine crouched in a past life, you want to laugh. You need to try to find something interesting for yourself. Turning around and heading towards the exit, the couple nods in agreement. They were confident that their daughter would be able to find something, and if not, she could always turn to her parents for help. Unfortunately, their worries will not disappear even in this case, but nothing can be done. It's worth at least trying to take the first steps, which can make the situation a little easier. In her past life, Dante survived diligently, so now it won't work out better. She has been reborn, so no one can blame her for the fact that now the girl is bored with all her activities. Falling on the bed, the beauty exhales furiously. She doesn't know at all what to do, even if she has already promised in advance to find something she likes. Looking at the ceiling, the heroine admits that this task is one of the most difficult that she has received recently. She can't understand why she suddenly found herself in the baby's body. In the morning, my brother came into the room. Leonard Foresca was the heroine's best friend, who always tried to support her despite the fact that he understood the least due to his 13 years of age. The young man sits down next to her, asking what she is going to do, to which he receives only a quiet grunt. The girl will pretend that she is looking, because there is absolutely no such desire. Smiling, the boy promises that he will then be responsible for Helena until she becomes a grandmother. If she never likes anything, they won't have any other options. Grunting, the little girl answers with sarcasm because the blonde seems too confident. The very confidence of a 13-year-old is cute, even though it doesn't help the matter. It is worth recognizing that Foresca's dignity is not wealth or power, but Leonard's cuteness. Big Brother is the sweetest creature on the planet, even if he tries to appear more serious. Stopping laughing, the heroine turns her head to the side, noticing one interesting detail in the room. She asks the young man about the sword that stands in the corner. Turning towards the thing, the guy sighs. This sword is intended for fencing training, which will take place this afternoon exactly as scheduled. Asking about lessons, the beauty chuckles with interest. It turns out that a teacher recommended by his father came. He graduated from the famous Capital Academy, which is located far from here. The time has come to learn how to use weapons, so the blonde is interested in asking many questions that interest her, which seem to never end. Lowering his eyes to the floor, the brother admits that he still does not quite understand the meaning of this lesson. It all started not so long ago, thereby not making it clear what was what and why. This answer causes excitement somewhere in Helena's heart. Leonard is quite understanding and diligent. He can even be praised for his independent studies, which have been going well for several years now. The young man does not know to what point they have reached. The teacher said that you need to find out everything yourself, so they just continue sparring, which began from the very beginning of the day. The question looms large in my head because no master would teach a beginner starting with sparring. Times have clearly changed, but this seems too hopeless a way to get what you need. The blonde can't leave everything as it is. Now retreating quickly, she asks Foresca for permission to attend the lesson. The boy freezes, not expecting something like this. It seemed to him that such things were not at all interesting to someone like Helena, even if, to some extent, everything was fine. Without even thinking about the answer, the young man smiles, actively nodding his head. He was never able to refuse his younger sister, who knew how to persuade. Only a few hours passed, which dragged on incredibly long. The couple went down to the second floor of the estate's hall sometime in the afternoon. The day remained ahead, promising to be interesting. Leonard's smile seemed strangely unusual. The blonde seemed to glow with happiness all the way, clearly hoping that everything would go as it should. No longer finding the strength to remain silent, the girl asks why the boy is looking forward to the lesson so much. He denies, saying only that this is all because his sister is clearly interested. Raising his weapon in the air, the guy smiles more than ever. If Helena becomes interested in swords, then they can train together, which will bring even more benefits to both of them. Trying not to show hidden emotions, the blonde just nods. The brother completely misunderstood what she was trying to say, despite the fact that the girl tried to explain her point of view. Swords were indeed once of interest to the heroine, who experienced pure delight when she was near them. Now they are terribly tired after all the years of handling guns. Helena came here only out of interest in the teacher, who chose a strange technique to teach lessons that should have been completely different. Hearing a voice from the door, the blonde smiles, greeting the teacher. The lady promises herself that she will punish the scoundrel who made fun of Leonard by teaching the techniques incorrectly. The man, as if straight from the cover, puts his fingers to his temple as a sign of greeting. His name is Vitor. The last name was not provided because it seemed the guy didn't want to say anything. Introducing his little sister, the boy notices the fact that she will not study because she wanted to watch the training that will take place here. Remaining patient, the girl exhales slowly. The impression that the brunette makes remains strange, so despite the fact that he is a fraudster, he seems to be, the beauty is going to teach him a lesson. Grabbing the hem of her dress, the girl tries to force herself to endure it, curtsying in greeting. She cannot begin to be indignant prematurely when this is completely unnecessary. Lowering her head down, the little girl introduces herself. I would really like to watch how the lesson will go, even if, according to others, she understands absolutely nothing about it. Grunting, the brunette notes that observation is everyone's choice. However, if she is interested in the weapon itself, she should immediately warn about some details. Freezing, the girl raises her eyebrows, trying to understand what exactly the man means. His statements incredibly worry the beauty, who finds it increasingly difficult to remain calm. A sword is a dangerous object. No matter how strange the following words may sound, this activity is not for women who remain fragile creatures incapable of fighting. Without expressing any emotions, the princess continues to look at her interlocutor with a stony expression on her face. I want to say a lot of things, but I don't have the strength to do so. The girl remembers Empress Dante Renatus, who turns out to be a man, judging by the young man's stories. Bursting into laughter, the guy declares that the queen was a mutant. Obviously, the woman was bluffing, and all this was invented to praise her. Frowning, the little girl tries to keep her face. There is not enough strength to help a person who is already so deeply mired in what happened to him. This bag of bones simply insulted the princess, turning all the torment into a bluff. I don't want to be angry at a baby born 500 years later, but it's difficult. Looking at the thing, the young man examines the sword with a loving gaze, saying that it was created for men who are strong and are always ready for all difficulties. Clenching her hand into a fist, the blonde thinks about how she can hit a person so that she will feel better. This needs to stop before it goes too far. The brother seems to understand everything from the first emotion, so stepping forward, he interrupts the man. Whatever Helena is interested in, no one should interfere with it so as not to frighten off her interest. Turning away, the brunette looks at the couple in shock. He quietly asks about what happened to the young man who suddenly decided to stand up for the princess. The girl standing behind is looking somewhere to the side. She is incredibly touched by how brave Leonard is. It's not like anyone else would have tried to resist, so she praises the boy. Smiling, the man notices the fact that the prince has become too self-confident. Being with his sister gave him a strength he didn't have before, no matter how hard he tried to hide it. Putting his sword forward, the man stops a few steps away from the guy, who freezes, eyes wide. Tears are held back, remaining somewhere in the corners of the eyes, which have become larger. Throwing the thing over his shoulder, the teacher grins. If the boy wants to have the right to object, he must defeat him at least once at all. Looking down at the floor, the young man blushes in embarrassment. Silence is regarded as giving up without a fight, so the master suggests finally starting the lesson that has already begun. Turning around and heading towards the middle of the hall, the brunette notices that they have absolutely no time for empty chatter like this. There are still many things to do ahead. Sighing, the girl tries to contain the uncontrollable anger that will very soon break through the dam of reason. A teacher should never say such things to a beginner who has only been studying for a month. This bastard shamed not someone incomprehensible, but Helena's brother, who promised to take care of her until she became a grandmother, being in some business that would be interesting to her. Folding her arms across her chest, the blonde looks coldly towards those sparring. She thinks about how angry she is at the scoundrel from the academy. A man does not watch his language at all, as well as his movements, which can bring trouble to himself. It is worth teaching a lesson to a puppy who does not behave quite appropriately. There were no goals in sparring except one. The master wanted to break Leonard's pride, so he won over and over again, being at the highest level of this chain. Lowering the guy to the floor once again, the brunette giggles disgustingly, forcing the young man to follow instructions that seem endless. He should rise more smoothly and follow everything that is said. Starting to laugh with a strange laugh, the teacher mocks the prince. He fell because his steps got confused. You should be careful, because the princess is looking at them, which can lead to shame. The boy tries to get up as quickly as possible, finding his last strength to lean on the sword that stands next to him. His cheeks were flushed with shame and fatigue, showing his true emotions. It seems as if the teacher is simply amused by the clumsiness of the child, who, instead of learning, receives a lot of ridicule, absolutely not worth the attention of others. At first, looking at such a picture, It may seem that a superior teacher is diligently teaching a beginner who does not understand at all how to do most of the elements. However, it is not. You can't fool the eyes of a trained fighter. The girl sees everything herself, each time becoming convinced that the man is simply trying to make the situation as worse as possible. Stepping aside, the guy offers to take a break. The prince must have been tired, even if the teacher himself could continue further, which, of course, is not true. He's just pretending he's not tired. This man has terrible sword skills. The man studied somewhere, but he strangely uses techniques that go haphazardly, all the while masterfully performing the easiest of them, accessible even to a child. If he had entered the battlefield, he would have died long ago because of his own problems. If he had the ability, the Duchess would scold him in a quiet place. However, this can be done even here with the help of his brother, who most likely also thirsts for revenge, which will be committed very soon. Moving closer to Leonard, the blonde gently places her hand on his shoulder. She quietly asks him if he believes her, and the actions that will need to be taken very soon in order to teach someone a lesson. Smiling, the young man slaps his hand as a sign that, of course, he believes in everything that he is told. He would never doubt his sister, who always has only the best plans. Leaning closer to her ear, the baby begins to whisper the necessary steps of the instructions. During the next sparring, the blonde will need to look at the teacher's feet, because this is what will help him a lot. The boy looks back towards the teacher, who seems completely unaware that an assassination attempt is being prepared on him. Quietly asking again, he tries to understand what the meaning is. Dante noticed one important thing that could very well serve her purpose. During a fight, a man strongly exposes his left leg in order to ensure a clear position. At the moment when the battle begins, the brother must aim exactly there. Don't be afraid to do something wrong, because in any case it won't end badly, so you should just poke him in the foot. The blonde seemed confused. Blinking his huge eyes in surprise, he looks intently at the girl, who continues to explain the rules of the game. Concluding her speech, Helena confidently says that he can do everything, which means he can try. She will always believe in her loved ones no matter what. Still not understanding what the point is, Leonard retreats and smiles to assure that everything is fine. He will believe his sister no matter what. Interrupting them, the brunette asks if they are done with their useless chatter. The rest time was over, which meant the second round of sparring had just begun. Stretching his sword forward, the man takes a stance that, as Faresca predicted, was an advantageous position for the enemy. This time, the boy is full of determination. Mocking the student, the master notices that the sister clearly encouraged the guy because his courageous face expressed all the emotions. It would be nice if this had an effect. The young man angrily clenches his teeth until that very slight crunch. He tries not to let his emotions out, but at the same time remains determined to fight. Dante sits back down on the sofa, folding his arms across his chest. This effect will be more than great. The cheater will get what he deserves because he clearly deserves it. The battle begins. A man rushes into battle, raising a wooden sword directly above his head, only to jump back the next second, allowing the enemy to miss. Leonard tries to defend himself before doing what was originally intended. It's hard to try to keep up over and over again when the teacher drags the child down. Laughing in a voice that is not his own, the brunette lifts his head even higher. These children get into trouble by continuing to disrespect adults, so this fight will curb their ardor. Jumping back, the blonde tries to fight back, realizing that each time it becomes more and more difficult. The master swings his sword more calmly, leaving no time to look at his feet. Looking down, the guy notices what Helena told him about. The leg is put forward again, making it clear that the little sister was clearly not mistaken in her calculations. The girl carefully watches the course of events. Right now, the teacher gave much more chances than before because of how actively he jumps from side to side, putting his legs forward. Leonard must continue to advance until he achieves complete success and victory. Rushing forward, the boy strikes his left limb, which turned up just in time. Jumping up from her seat, the blonde tries to contain the inner delight that is rushing out. The boy got it the first time, hoping not to disappoint the princess looking at them. The man cannot concentrate, feeling incredible pain. Screaming at the top of his lungs, he doesn't understand how this could even happen. Rushing forward, the boy looks at his master with concern. It seems that he achieved what he wanted and got exactly what he wanted. This feeling will remain irreplaceable. The guy did exactly what Renatus, who was incredibly proud, told him to do. The teacher lies injured on the floor, probably feeling ashamed. Getting up and heading towards the people in the hall, the blonde happily congratulates her brother. Today he proved himself, thereby winning the victory. Standing up and leaning on his elbows, the brunette screams furiously, claiming that these were not the methods that are so cowardly that they cannot be taken into account. This sparring was not valid. Dropping down next to her, the stone-faced blonde says that she knows nothing about swords, and her brother is a beginner. He didn't have too much choice in techniques. A man must admit defeat. Not allowing him to finish the last sentence, the brunette jumps up, shouting that the princess has no right to interfere in men's affairs, which should remain only between them. Quiet laughter fills the room from which you want to escape. It is non-recyclable garbage that has no future in this world. It seems that he has lost the battle with his mind. Without thinking twice, the girl asks her brother to lend her a sword, extending her hand to the thing in order to immediately intercept it into her possession. Now the game will be played by different rules. Not allowing the man to rise forward, the blonde points the weapon at him, ordering him to attack or defend. It will depend on him. The girl remains persistent, ordering an attack so that she can show exactly why the teacher lost. Laughing, he says that if he is wounded, he will have nothing to do with it. Getting up, the brunette takes a pose that proves that he will lose very soon. It's impossible to forgive someone so terrible. He became overexcited, hoping that he would win against the child. By attacking, he hopes that he has at least some chance, which is a pure misunderstanding. This degenerate is a complete flaw, which simply appears as an eyesore. Carefully dodging, Dante asks his brother to pay attention. By blocking an attack to the face, you can easily miss it, allowing the enemy to get tired much faster than expected. Leonard freezes, unable to say anything. He watches in amazement at the fight, which seems to only be gaining momentum with every second since it happened. Moving her sword forward, the blonde deftly makes her opponent feel weird about the whole thing. Victory is very close. The man recoils in horror, still trying to fight. He tries to make sure that this time the child also loses, but this time, the outcome will be completely different. The teacher underestimated the princess because she was just a child. Going to ask her with his useless abilities, the young man chose not the best method from the ones proposed. You need to be agile and confident. Giving his next instructions, Dante turns his hand, allowing the other sword to slide away. The weight is too sweet because the stand is shaking. Still trying to dodge, the brunette straightens his shoulders and receives a blow to his stomach, which makes him bend over and start coughing. There would be no more mercy, and this was the final step. Raising her leg up, Heiress pushes her body down, causing it to fall onto the cold tiles, remaining there after all the techniques of a 10-year-old child. This mediocrity just wanted to show off to the newcomers by pretending to be strong and not teach them how to fencing. He taught his student, who was a prince, absurdity. Sighing, the princess says that it was so simple that you want to yawn. Getting up, the master tries to put 2 words into a sentence, not understanding how this happened. As in the previous life, everyone who touched the family suffered ruin at the hands of the knight. Smiling, the girl repeats the guy's words, saying that the sword does not suit him. The best solution would be not to touch such a terrible and dangerous object, but to start embroidering. Crawling back, the enemy still won't let up, trying to object to everything that has been said to him lately. He doesn't want to just accept it. Raising her hand in the air, the blonde makes the master shrink and begin to shake from the fear that has been present in the room for the last few tens of minutes. Throwing the wooden weapon into the air, the heroine turns around, no longer feeling any satisfaction or any desire to be in this place. Seeing the sword approaching the body, the man screams in horror, trying to get up as quickly as possible. The pain bothers him, so he remains sitting on the cold tiles. As she approaches the door, the blonde stops only to say that teachers are no longer welcome in the palace along with his strange teaching methods. The weapon hits his head, causing the guy to fall and cower. Today he got what he deserved, even if he hoped for the usual favorable outcome, which was not destined to come true. Approaching Leonard, who is still standing with his mouth open, the girl puts her hand on his shoulder, trying to assure him that everything will be fine, because he will no longer see the one who humiliated him. From today, the girl will take over the training of the young man. Therefore, just like that, Helena, who was 10 years old, found what she would like to do after a long time of searching. Arriving at her parents', the girl tries to express her point of view as gently as possible. She wants to teach her brother the arts of swordsmanship, which will obviously help her in not being bored anymore. The girl decided to tell this news to the married couple, who promised that they would support their daughter in absolutely any endeavor that she would like. You could tell they weren't entirely delighted, however, it was more like a veil that covered their eyes. After all, after everything that happened, they seemed extremely surprised. I wanted to ask a lot of questions. The couple, despite their words, refused the children purely for their safety, without even explaining the exact reason, hoping that they would figure it out on their own. A week passed that seemed to drag on for almost an eternity. Duke Fresco's office, as usual, was in complete silence despite the fact that his daughter had arrived there. Turning to Helena, who was interested in reading the book, her father announces that he sent a man and found out about the teacher whom she fired. They needed more information. It turned out that due to a lack of points, the guy often stayed for a second year at the academy, which affected his career. The friend who recommended him apologized for a very long time after what happened. This swindler did not even surprise the princess because his insides were immediately visible from him. The father believed the reputation of that academy and his biography, finding himself deceived. Fresca is not a line of swordsmen who are trying to complete their task. That is why the Duke trusted his acquaintance in this matter without checking the information. The man could not even think that the teacher would be useless, that he would even be defeated by a 10-year-old girl. This, of course, only happened because it was the main character, but it was also worth attention. Smiling, the blonde is glad that she fired the crook before it was too late. If Leonard had continued to learn the ropes from him, he might have simply gotten used to the wrong approach that was being used. The blonde turns away once again, trying to come up with an excuse. There is some meaning in the daughter's words, and she never throws words to the wind. However, common sense must also be present. She says that she will teach someone to fencing, although she herself has never studied it in her life, exposing herself and those around her to unnecessary risk. Rising from his chair, the father offers to make a deal. The girl was never interested in anything, and now that she has the desired thing, nothing can be missed. There's a visitor coming to the Duke's lands next week, and he's the same age as Leonard, which makes for some interesting things to happen. The proposal was that Helena try to train her brother to a level where they could fight without any problems. Clarifying, the lady understands that they want her brother to defeat that guest. Judging by Leonard's understanding and diligent attempts, this will be quite possible. The guy smiles. The daughter agreed because she thought that she would be able to do it. However, she realized that the proposal was more of a provocation. Continuing his speech, the father announced that this summer Prince Kaiser would arrive and stay at their estate somewhere for a not very long period of time. The young lady freezes in shock at what she just heard. She can't believe that she is being asked to defeat the famous prince, thereby proving her abilities. I want to run away and forget about the deal, because after Rebirth, this is the first situation in 10 years that left the princess speechless, who promised to return not so soon. Many say that Kaiser is an incredibly capable child. In the imperial palace, he was trained as the future head of state, and of course he studied the art of the sword. This will most likely be incredibly difficult, because Leonard and the prince had a huge gap in training. The young man was excellent at wielding a real sword, while the blonde was just beginning his journey. Thus, the father was hinting that it was better to give up. My brother is distracted from his thoughts by grabbing his sister's shoulder. He asks if she can see the color of the crown prince's eyes, to which she shakes her head. Turning around, the girl notices the boy. They say that all people from the Grey family have scarlet eyes, which seems surprising, considering how rare this color is among the rest. Turning a skeptical glance at those around her, the blonde sighs. She doesn't understand it, so she always thought it was nothing special. Thinking back, the Empress remembers how she passed the title on to her best friend, Duke Elisa Grey, before her death. He was a wonderful man who always served with his heart and soul. Now this brings back memories because the girl is sure that then it was red eyes with a kind, devoted sparkle in the pupils that looked at her. The blonde leans down to greet His Highness. Introducing his name, he says that it is a great honor to meet one of the royal couple who has arrived. Helena decides to do the same. So curtsying, she closes her eyes, calling her first and last name, which is already known to everyone because of the dukedom. Looking at the young man so closely, Dante notices strange similarities between the prince and Heiress. They are too similar, but it is logical because the guy is his descendant. Without allowing anyone to finish the sentence, the brunette turns away. If these were empty greetings, then he, of course, did not need them, even if they were supposed to somehow soften the situation. The boy had a disgusting character, which was known to everyone around him. Even if this is so, Kaiser was somewhat right, because these were indeed empty greetings. Normally, the blonde would pretend she didn't hear anything. However, instead, because of the prince's resemblance to his best friend, the girl asks what kind of greeting His Majesty wanted then. Gray turns back sharply, widening his eyes. Looking at the interlocutor, he quietly asks what she said, realizing that he most likely heard it. Stretching her hand forward, the lady offers to shake hands instead of unnecessary greetings, which for some reason he did not like at all, even though this was customary in high society. The people around stared in surprise at the outstretched palm, which was still very close to the guy, who seemed astonished as everyone else. Jumping to the side, the brunette shouts that this is completely unthinkable. The girl dared to behave inappropriately, thereby putting herself in danger. The guy who arrived with the prince grabs his hand and begins to shake it. The princess is incredible because she decided to meet His Highness halfway, despite all the obstacles. The man apologizes for daring to touch the body of the imperial family, but while they are here, everyone needs to live together, even if someone doesn't want to. Tears roll down their cheeks on their own. By clicking his tongue in contempt, the boy no longer blocks the greeting that made him want to fall into the ground. Turning to the princess, he nods. They will try to live these few months on good terms without spoiling each other's entire vacation here. Expressing no emotion, the blonde just nods. He immediately became so soft, even if it seemed that he would become even more arrogant. The hand squeezes the woman's palm forcefully, causing slight pain. It seems that the prince had already been informed that the girl had some sword skills, so he decided to defeat her by force. You have to fight with a boy who was born 500 years later, thereby driving yourself into an unpleasant situation. In this case, she cannot lose even if this happens. Smirking, the blue-eyed girl understands that it would be best to teach this guy how to properly shake, because it is impossible to win with strength alone. It is important to put pressure on the joint, so by raising her thumb, the beauty presses, thereby causing the bones to compress, sending endless pain into the body. The young man jumps back, shouting to the whole hall from how much strength was invested in him, which seemed strange for a child of 10 years. He lost, even if the fight had not yet begun. The servant runs up to His Highness, trying to ask him what happened, because the reaction was clearly unusual for those who surrounded Kaiser. Frowning, the boy tries to recover, declaring that nothing happened, even if just a minute ago he burst into a loud scream that everyone heard. Smiling, the blonde follows the brunette with her eyes. After all, this little guy is a descendant of Heiress, because just like his ancestor, he's not going to snitch on anyone. Waving her hand after her, the girl promises that this summer will be unforgettable for both of them, even if you shouldn't hope for it. Now the prince realized that if he went against the enemy, he would die immediately. Smiling wryly in response, the brunette happily awaits this moment, even if from his face one can understand that he just wants to take revenge for everything that happened as soon as possible. This couple will arrange quite a few fights among themselves, thereby making everyone else worry. This is the only way to make everyone believe in their strength. Now they are simply having a confrontation that cannot be interrupted. They glare at each other, smoldering in their gaze. Mom brought Helena into her office to talk to her about what happened. Even if the emperor is the same age as the baby, she should always try to behave appropriately. It must be difficult for the boy after the loss. In this estate, he and Leonard are the only ones of his age, so they must try to treat him with affection. Deciding not to argue so as not to waste extra energy, the blonde nods in agreement, realizing that this will be the only way out. She will remember all the instructions given. The girl thought that the first meeting with Kaiser was successful, but obviously the adults did not think so. They looked like cats that had gotten into a fight. It wasn't all that bad, because thanks to this, the princess learned the reason for the future emperor's visit to their estate. Last winter, the empress passed away, so the prince fell into despair, no longer finding any reason to be happy. It was something unnecessary. Thanks to his father's care, the boy left the imperial castle and came here to get some relief. This was the real reason why the ruling family ended up here. The situation made it possible, at least a little, to feel sorry for the guy who had lost too much. She understood that the arrival was too sudden, but she was never interested in the reason. After the Empress died, everything turned upside down. There was probably no one in the castle who could protect Kaiser, which was a direct threat. His father brought him here in order to get rid of opposition forces at this time. Now in this situation it seems even more annoying, because if you are in someone else's house, you should show at least a modicum of respect. Walking out into the corridor, the girl waved her arms in different directions. If this behavior continues, Helena will definitely beat him up in some quiet corner. A cough from the side makes Dante freeze. Her eyes flutter innocently because she was in an extremely funny position that could not be explained. The person who interrupted her was, of course, the prince, who asked what the girl and her mother were talking about. Many say that the blonde was scolded for what happened earlier. It's strange that the boy has been waiting here all this time. Mom lectured for more than an hour, which was recorded immediately after it was over. The words were true, so Renatus nods. Sighing, the young man says that this is the right decision. Dante's behavior was a bit tactless, but it doesn't bother him, so there's nothing to worry about. Nodding, the blonde promises that she will do so. She's not too bothered by what happened, which once again proves that she doesn't care at all. The reaction remains only a quiet sigh. By putting his finger forward, the young man says that she better worry. Many problems will arise if the girl does not behave in an appropriate manner with those who are higher in status than her. He has imperial blood flowing in him, but now, if there is no dukedom, then he will be the one who will be in a difficult situation, because he was sent here for safekeeping. The victorious smile itself is displayed on Renatus's face. This young man himself ran here to save his blood, shouting in this position about his status as a prince. He cannot put himself above others. Gritting his teeth, the guy tries to restrain himself so as not to say even more nasty things, which will probably come back to bite him later. Lowering his head, the boy sighs heavily. He wants to start a conversation about something important, but he doesn't know at all what exactly to say in this situation. Gathering his strength, he announces that he wanted to wait for the princess in order to clear up the misunderstanding. Everything that happened before weighed on his psyche, so it was worth doing it even earlier. Looking contemptuously at her interlocutor, the heroine sighs. The guy pretends to be an innocent lamb, despite the fact that with that handshake, they themselves promised each other to tear the enemy into pieces. Without allowing a word to be inserted, the young man continues his speech. His person always causes a lot of problems, so even this time he is not the most welcome guest in this estate. The fact that the family accepted the boy proves that they opposed the Baller family, the family of the first empress. For Heiress, who left the front, His Highness is just ballast. With those words, when meeting, the brunette tried to say that they would not show him false hospitality. He didn't intend to spoil anyone's mood or do anything bad. Freezing, the blonde, trying to understand and digest all the information that she had just been given. It turns out that she was the only person who acted inappropriately. It turns out that the girl was torturing an innocent person who really suffered because of what was happening in the castle. This was the first mistake in Helena Fareschi's life. The guy seemed like someone who was backed into a corner, but still trying to do at least something in his situation, which made it clear that everything was bad. He wanted everything to be as before. Beauty failed, thinking that the foolish prince was too arrogant, but he already felt a lot of pressure, so he reacted accordingly. Turning around to leave, the girl makes no further attempts to explain herself. It's too late to regret it, especially since it was true, because the child was not happy about visitors. In any case, there were more important problems now. You need to think about how to break the boy, which means the girl will believe that he launched a strategic psychological attack in advance. For the last time, allowing herself to turn towards the corridor, Helena realizes that she is surrounded by complete emptiness and silence. The prince had long since gone to his room. Heading to her brother, the beauty wanted to just talk. But from the threshold, she received a question about whether she had made peace with the prince. Obviously, everyone expected this to be exactly what would happen. Perhaps the girl has already forgotten, but this incident happened in the hall a week ago. There was a bad atmosphere that hung in the air, making everyone worry. Lowering the sword to the ground, the lady notes that it was a psychological duel between two children, After this, no one has to put up with it. There is no need to worry about that boy, only if the father said something about this incident. No one said anything, but they both would like to live on friendly terms with the prince. It must have been difficult for him to make friends in the imperial palace, considering how bad things had gotten lately. His brother would like to make friends with him. Such innocent and kind people still exist, as evidenced by Leonard, who still had to swing his sword 298 times to complete his training. After defeating that disgusting teacher, Heiress did not ask anything about training, realizing that it would be easier this way. The student's result was visible to the naked eye. The boy trains day after day, so the master should little by little learn the strength of the enemy. Nodding her head, the girl agrees to make peace with His Highness. Literally glowing with happiness, the blonde actively nods. He doesn't know that this is not true, so he can't help but rejoice. While she is away, you can complete the 295 swings that remain on the list. As a result of several days of observation, the princess learned that Hamilton and Kaiser were training swordsmanship on the second floor of the hall, which could be reached in a few minutes. Clearly, reconciliation is a cop-out. First, you need secret surveillance to understand whether the enemy has strengths and weaknesses. Dante must do everything to ensure that Leonard wins. Knocking on the door, the princess opens the oak doors, carefully looking inside. She is in no hurry to enter without permission. Hamilton, noticing the girl, lowers his weapon, examining the beauty with interest. He wonders what happened that she suddenly decided to come here. Still standing in the aisle, the blonde awkwardly scratches the back of her head, saying that she would like to watch the training that is about to begin. The teacher smiles, remembering that she is also learning fencing with Prince Leonard. She is probably interested in the techniques taught in the palace. She teaches, but it would take too long to explain now. Approaching the guest, the guy asks the prince if he wants to see the lady next to them. There is no way they can refuse the princess, who will not interfere. Without expressing any interest, the guy just sighs, agreeing to this proposal. Hamilton can do whatever he wants because it won't affect the training in any way. Trying to clarify whether it is definitely possible, the teacher almost bursts into tears. Kaiser really has a terrible character. If he was going to allow it, he better do it in a good mood. Sitting down on the chair that was kindly provided, the girl looks at the beginning of the battle. Either way, it gave her a chance to examine his weaknesses. This chance cannot be missed, so you can try to come to training more than once. Dante promises to study the enemy's abilities so that he knows his every move. By holding out his sword and taking a stance, the brunette announces the start of the battle. The prince gets a total of 30 seconds to prepare before he rushes into battle, trying to fight back and attack. Watching the progress of the fight, the beauty tries not to show that she is completely in shock. It seems like everything didn't go as planned. The young man tried to make the fight more varied. Quietly admitting her mistake, the blonde lowers herself down. The prince is too good at what he does, despite trying not to show it. Surprisingly for his age, he has very high concentration and quick reactions. If Leonard gets better through effort, then everything is completely different. Kaiser was born with abilities that could not be interrupted. One could say that the young man was somewhat similar to the main character because she was exactly the same. Being in shock, the girl realizes that now they have huge problems. Leonard cannot be compared to a prince who does everything in the best possible way. The blonde is trying to fulfill all the steps that he promised to do for his sister, not yet suspecting what kind of mess they got into. It will take a lot more effort than expected. Exhaling air, Hamilton stops. His Majesty is in good shape today, so they can continue after the teacher has rested for a while. Nodding lightly, the brunette lowers the wooden sword in order to hide it in the sheath intended for the item. He was also pretty tired, so he needed at least a 5-minute rest. Running up, the girl holds out a towel, noticing the fact that the young man has incredible abilities. She is really surprised that he revealed such a side. Frowning, the guy accepts the thing, asking from which side he was seen before. He had always been one of the most capable children studying the arts, so there was no point in doubting his abilities. Smiling, the girl nods, trying to change the subject. After watching the sparring, no matter how she looked at this kid, no flaws caught her eye. There are no options left except to personally engage him in battle and find at least one weakness. If the prince was not too tired, they could engage in battle. Kaiser freezes, trying to find the right words, which disappeared somewhere at that very second. Hamilton also could not find words, not understanding how the princess decided to do this. The young man starts screaming. He heard that the girl had just recently started learning fencing, which meant she could get hurt. The answer is that mastery must be learned by being wounded. This is true, but if the girl gets hurt, he will be ashamed in front of the Duke. The teacher agrees, because even if the princess were to spar with someone more outstanding than her, she would still not be able to learn anything. It's cute how the couple cares about the girl, but she needs to find Kaiser's weaknesses by any means. Otherwise, it's all over. Assuming that he is not very interested in sparring with the young lady, the girl sighs. It's not about interest, but perhaps you can get ahead of the reward for winning. Something material would not fit the description very well, so all that remains is to come up with something like fulfilling the wish of the sparring winner. The silence lingers as Hamilton tries to get His Highness to refuse. If something goes wrong, the fees will be too high. Grabbing the handle, the brunette frowns, asking if this will be absolutely any wish that he wishes to be fulfilled. It seems the bait worked as it should. Extending her hand, the blonde nods. The winner can overcome absolutely any desire he wants, regardless of the age of the combatants. Warning that later it will be impossible to back down, only accepting the terms of the game. The young man nods, because it turns out that this is the best choice that could be made. The blonde chuckles. Looking into her opponent's eyes, she anticipates how she will understand his weaknesses, which will give her the strength to train Leonard. Hamilton, who already seemed resigned to the future, announces the start of the fight, looking at the young men who stood in a stance, waiting until they could take action. Almost crying, the man begs that none of them get hurt. You need to try to do everything as carefully as possible without any bad consequences. The young man doesn't answer, just thinking that it's all over now. He would like to win without injury, but everything will be seen very soon. When choosing a strategy, the princess reminds herself that this battle is one of weaknesses, which means she needs to try to attack the enemy in a variety of ways. The servant announces the beginning, which means that in the next second the couple breaks into each other, starting to move to the side, fighting off with swords. The first way to get what you deserve is tactics that come on their own. The thigh side is the part that is difficult to defend, which makes it clear that it will be easier. Noticing the attempts made to hit the leg, the boy quickly dodges so as not to end up on the ground in the next second. Deciding to take a step that helped bring victory closer, the brunette counterattacks her opponent, who almost manages to jump back. It becomes clear that the fight will not end so quickly. This little guy defends himself incredibly quickly while trying to counterattack an opponent who is unable to do at least something about him. From the scarlet eyes that glow with the fire of victory, one can understand that the young man craves victory no less than his rival, who still cannot concentrate on what she is doing. Swinging his weapon, the prince attacks from the side, forcing the princess to defend herself at the speed of light, while moving closer to deliver another blow. Moving to the sides, the couple lowers their swords, giving themselves a few seconds of truce so they have time to gather their strength and enter the second round. Grunting, the prince notices that Helena is clearly not a beginner, despite the fact that she said that she was just learning fencing. Of course, she wouldn't bet if she intended to lose. Grinning, the brunette nods. The girl is right, because then it wouldn't be so interesting if she didn't even intend to try to do what was intended. The blonde said that she was not a beginner, but still the child's body lacked the physical training that was present in the old body. She thought that things had gotten better recently while training Leonard, but that turned out to be untrue. Reflecting another attack, the girl tried to deliver another blow as quickly as possible, which was still in vain. The princess brought attacks to places that were difficult to block, but every time the guy instinctively reflected them. To resist such a genius, you need to make a lot more effort. She simply had no other choice but to apply the knowledge gained in battle, not memorized in lessons. The next attack will definitely be impossible to repel, so the young man will simply have to quietly accept the defeat that has come to him. The sword rushes with great speed straight towards the prince, who freezes for a second, obviously trying to understand what to do in such a situation. Instead of being confused, the young man covers himself with his elbow. You cannot reflect an attack by blocking it with your hand, because this can be incredibly dangerous. Still holding his elbow at the ready, not allowing the object to pass, the brunette swings his sword, which flies into the air next to the heroine. This guy is clearly crazy for trying to appear the best using techniques like this. They stand ready to finish each other, but Hamilton breaks up the fight. Taking off, the man runs to His Majesty, asking if he is okay after what just happened to him, even though he brought all the problems upon himself. Sighing angrily, the brunette declares that he almost won, but was stopped at the most inopportune moment, which ruined everything. Intervening in the conversation, the girl notices the fact that it was a draw, to which she receives a bunch of objections. If the teacher had not intervened, the guy would definitely have won, thereby helping himself to conquer desire. If the sword had been real, the prince would have been left without an arm long ago. This fact was generally accepted despite the fact that the man tried his best to deny his involvement. Instinctively grabbing his shoulder, the young man is not going to take the remark into account. Obviously, the one whose head is cut off loses. Hamilton, clearly giving in to panic, tries to force Kaiser to stop saying such terrible things, but they do not listen to him. Turning to his interlocutor, he says that he has not had such an interesting sparring for a long time. Pushing the ward towards the entrance, the master asks what he meant by this. You can't say something like that because he was asked not to get hurt. A mission that the young man successfully failed. The door slams, forcing the blonde to remain completely alone in the huge hall, skeptically looking at those leaving behind. Chuckling an abnormal laugh, the girl turns her gaze to her shaking hands, which still cannot calm down. This guy is truly something. By training Leonard, the heroine feels that it is not in vain, even if he has not achieved success now. In the future, his brother is guaranteed to become a worthy warrior. There was no doubt about it. Kaiser's whole charm was that he was incredibly unpredictable. All the time trying to make sure that the enemy did not understand his next steps, the brunette made a monster of himself. Perhaps these were the feelings the master experienced in a past life when he first saw Dante. The girl never asked him anything, realizing that she would not be answered. There was a certain confidence in the actions that if you keep going, something will happen after training, which will last a certain time. In the evening of the same day, a dinner was held in the main hall, which was attended by the whole family and guests almost in full. The Duchess asks where His Highness is now. Hamilton, trying to somehow make amends for the earlier situation, simply says that the prince was pretty tired, so he decided to stay in his room today. The blonde sitting at the table is clearly stressed. A new friend didn't come to dinner, and that couldn't help but worry. Most likely, this happened because of what happened earlier. Still, Kaiser experienced severe pain when he tried to block the blow with his sword. He didn't show it, so she thought that maybe it would just be a bruise, but as practice has shown, it turned out to be much worse. Slowly exhaling air in an attempt to calm down, the princess realizes that this was also her fault, although the young man should have been calmer, or at least careful. This situation seemed unpleasant to everyone involved. Approaching the door of the prince's room, the Duchess quietly knocks on the wood. A normal, familiar voice is heard behind the door. The heroine promised herself that she would return for lunch immediately after checking his condition. It seems that everything was in perfect order. This is the second time that Helena Faresca is so worried about another person's condition, even if this was not inherent in her before. Walking inside, the girl notices a guy sitting on a chair. Dante freezes, trying to find decent words to describe what she is feeling now, or at least ask about the prince's well-being. Horror is displayed on the heroine's face. The arm was broken, so there was no question of a bruise. She did something terrible to the child, and even if he put his elbow in, it didn't mean anything. Smirking, the brunette notices that the interlocutor has a funny expression on her face. She seemed to feel horror and confusion at the same time. Sitting down next to him, Renatus asks whether the treatment was carried out properly. Hamilton invited a doctor to ensure that the wound healed as quickly as possible. Folding her arms across her chest, the lady begins to grumble about how she shouldn't take something like this so lightly. She knows what it's like because she also broke her finger, after which the place hurt and ached due to the rain and changing weather. Memories pop up in my head. In order to protect herself and save her life, the knight tried to do everything as best as possible, but, having failed, she grabbed her sword to stop him. Turning away, Dante says that she did not try to stop the attack, but was simply fooling around. The best solution was to change the topic because, without noticing it, the princess almost told about an incident from a past life. Asking a few more questions, Helena wonders if Kaiser will lie about the fact that it was the heroine's fault that he broke his arm. There is no point in him doing this because he is not a child. He would never act in such a shameful manner, but he does not even deny that he does not like the girl at all. She is the same, because the guy knows very well that the beauty does not like him. Putting on a smile, the Duchess says that for her, everything is just the opposite. Actually, she likes His Highness because she would like to raise such a genius for future victories in battles. Clearly embarrassed, the guy jumps up from his seat, starting to talk about sparring. At the end of the fight, the girl still relaxed and almost lost. Unsurprised, the blonde nods easily. She will not deny the truth, because when the lady saw that Kaiser was blocking the blow with his hand, she was afraid that she might hurt someone. At that moment, the lady could not change the course of the attack, but it was necessary to avoid breaking his arm. So having tried her best, the girl almost lost. It turns out that the prince knew what could happen and knew about the consequences, but still crossed the line and put a block, exposing himself as a masochist. The only excuse is that the guy had absolutely no idea what wish the lady could make. He asks what the girl wanted to ask. By putting on an innocent expression on her face, the lady announces that she just wanted to get herself a servant who would obey her. There is absolutely nothing wrong with this. Almost exploding, the brunette shouts that the emperor of an entire country cannot become a servant of an aristocrat who is lower in status than him. The answer is a roaring laugh. The girl asks what the young man wanted to ask, who flinches after asking the question. He didn't expect anyone in his right mind to ask him this. Turning away, the brunette pretends that everything is fine because the fight ended in a draw long ago. It was unfair because the princess spoke about her desire. Deciding to take the prince weakly, the lady grabs his hand, saying that she understood what exactly they wanted from her. The man wanted to force the girl to do something daring and inappropriate. Turning away, the young man sighs. It is unclear who they take him for, although the brunette just wanted to suggest calling each other by name in order to perhaps become friends in the future. Not understanding what the problem is, the blonde asks why make a whole wish out of this. Perhaps she was not destined to understand what the whole problem was. For the guy, this is a very serious matter, because even when His Highness asks to address him informally, people become uncomfortable, which leads to misunderstandings. When the young man asked Hamilton to address him by name, he fell to the floor in a bow. He begged to forgive him if he had done something wrong, and not to do anything like that to him, continuing to sob. Looking at her interlocutor, the heroine understands what he is leading to. The same thing had happened to her before, because in her previous life, she was an empress. Now everything has continued despite the changes. In her past life, the queen also almost begged Heiress to do what she asked, but in the end she received nothing but a refusal, which turned out to be difficult to accept. Although everyone held the empress up and stood in awe, all they really wanted was the power that the princess could give them. Nobody wanted to get close to her. It was precisely because the others wanted nothing to do with the queen that she simply took this step, asking Heiress to address her informally when they were alone. Instead of agreeing, the man told Her Highness not to say anything like that, even as a joke, thereby rejecting the proposal. Snapping herself out of her thoughts, the beauty nods, promising that she will call the prince by his name, even if it is not something that should be done. Asking in surprise, the prince cannot believe that everything will be exactly as he wants. The princess promises to speak to him as a friend in an informal setting. Smiling, the beauty nods again in agreement, as if confirming her words. She asks the prince to sometimes spar with her so that the training will help her remember forgotten things. The brunette freezes, mindlessly looking at his interlocutor who offers nothing more, only waiting for a specific answer which she should receive very soon. The guy's cheeks turn a little red from such drastic changes, despite the fact that he was incredibly glad that the girl so easily agreed to everything that was offered to her. If Kaiser knew that this would happen, he would definitely come up with a more complicated wish in order to win and then make it. The girl just started calling the guy by name, and he was already so happy. It seems that for the complete picture, only such small details are needed, in the form of at least one friend. If Heiress had done the same then, perhaps the Duchess would have felt the same. Laughing lightly, Dante imagined her face in the past, which would express joy. Bursting out with uncontrollable laughter, the heroine tries to calm down, hearing reproaches from the prince, who became even more flushed with color, which does not leave her face. Kaiser decided to take a break from training until his hand healed. He seemed quite complete without classes because now he had friends. The three of them got together almost every day to play cards. This was a suggestion from Leonard, who clearly cared about Kaiser as if he were his own brother. But after a few days, everyone got fed up. As usual, lying on the carpet, the friends complained about everything because in addition to all the problems, trouble did not come alone, forcing them to stay at home due to the rainy season, which had just begun. The boredom is interrupted by a voice that says that on such days, something unusual usually appears in the duchy. Waiting for the children to ask about this, the man pauses. The brunette clasps his hands, saying that on summer nights like today, a woman in blue clothes usually appears in the basement, looking for a new victim. The boys try to make their interlocutor change his mind and say that he simply lied about everything, but he remains silent. Sighing indifferently, the beauty with a stony expression on her face says that ghosts do not exist. This was clear even to small children who were 5 years old. Putting his finger forward, the man assures that there are neither one nor two witnesses, which adds credibility. It is for this reason that the Duke restricts the entrance to the basement. The prince quietly turns to Leonard, asking if this is true. Almost crying, the boy says that the entrance to the forbidden room is really closed, so that no one goes there. Of course, the father does not allow him to go down and go there, because no one knows what will happen to the one who is caught by the ghost. A person may be very unwell. You can see that the corners of the guy's lips are raised, which means he's joking. However, without stopping, the man asks to be calm, so as not to catch the eye of the woman in blue. Starting to scream, the friends grab each other, hoping that this will somehow save them. Obviously, they are children, so they believed in another story. Knocking on the door, thereby causing panic, the brunette enters, asking Mr. Viscount to discuss with him the details of the carriage repair, which needs to begin today. Sighing, the blonde escorts Hamilton out. Apparently, the guy relieves stress after work. Asking those in the room why they were so scared, the girl looks at them skeptically because this is not true. Jumping up from his seat, the prince vehemently assures that ghosts are not a myth and they exist. They are even in the imperial castle, not to mention the Duke's estate. They say that on days when the sun disappears, there is complete silence from which you want to hide. A ghost haunts the castle and seeks revenge. Sealed by Empress Dante Renatus in her youth, the dragon Cruce flies through the corridor and searches for her reborn body. She left the world a long time ago, but he still does not want to forgive what the woman did. It's even harder to believe in such a fable than what they were talking about before. No one seems to care about her opinion or why this happened, because she knows this dragon. It's not clear why you need to fly in the castle if everything burned down and disappeared. The prince decides to take an important step and suggests that instead of cards, they go to the basement tonight and see for themselves whether there is a ghost there. A fight begins between friends. The princess is not going to go anywhere, while the prince is trying to get her to get up and go with them. Nobody pays attention to Leonard. Falling to the ground, the girl rolls onto her back. It seems terrible to do what you most don't want on such a hot, sultry day. If a couple wants, they can go together. Already turning to threats, the girl breaks into a scream. She doesn't want to go anywhere, no matter what they might offer her. I just want to get a little peace and quiet. Anyway, no one left a choice, so the beauty stands in front of the door to the basement, holding a candle to illuminate the road, which is completely covered in darkness. Stopping near the doors, the guys check the door, realizing that it is locked, which is quite logical after all the stories. I don't want to believe that the heroine fell for such a simple trick that was thrown as bait. They wanted to take her lightly, saying that the princess was simply afraid. This character trait did not go away even after Rebirth, so the Virgin is skeptical about such fun. Nobody knows where the key is that would help open the door. Taking out his sword, Leonard swings. They understand that there is nothing left but to break the lock that blocked the passage to that very treasured place. Realizing that there is no choice, the girl rushes forward. There is no need to create unnecessary noise, which would probably wake up all the inhabitants. She can handle this matter herself. The girl, of course, does not have a key, but this is not even necessary, because there is always a hairpin in her hair that will help to cope with a closed room, allowing friends inside. During the times of street children, she often did this, but in order to avert suspicion, the beauty says that she just read about it in a book that talked about everything. The door opens with a dull sound, letting everyone inside. Once there, young people still cannot muster the strength to go inside. Taking the candle from her brother's hands, the girl orders them to look at their feet. From here, she will go first in order to prevent any problems that might arise. The opinion changed because Leonard took the blow, being the eldest. Carefully going down the steps, he looks around to understand what awaits them. The atmosphere in the basement turned out to be even worse than imagined. The dampness and dust didn't help at all, but I had to pull myself together, because if one of them got hurt, only the heroine could take care of her friends. There was nothing scary here, even if at first it seemed like there was a ghost there. In the depths of this tunnel, there is a canal because everyone hears the murmur of water, which makes it clear what exactly it means. There are definitely no ghosts here, but the temperature has dropped sharply. At the beginning of the stairs, I was almost breathless due to the temperature, but now my body is literally freezing. The couple was finally convinced that everything was in order, and the story about the woman in blue was a fiction, which means that it was time for them all to head upstairs to return. The iron door slowly rises, exposing itself, allowing the boys to see something in the distance. A little nervous, the blonde carefully examines the darkness in which something is visible. In the distance, a strange silhouette appeared in a blue dress, which was suspiciously similar to the girl whom Hamilton described before leaving the children alone, sending them to repair the carriage. Starting to scream frantically, the guys scatter in different directions. Their eyes widen in a split second, thereby making it clear that they are in shock. The blonde, who did not expect to see something like that in the basement, heading here just to prove to her friends that all this is not true, looks away with concentration. She can't believe there is a person there. Grabbing the lady by the arms, her friends drag her away from the basement, continuing to scream about the ghost they just saw. There was no point in resisting anymore. All that remains is to say thank you for the fact that the guys, despite their fear, brought the girl with them, because now they could remember what happened for the rest of the time on an ongoing basis. The father, as usual, was sleeping peacefully in his bed with his wife, but screams from the corridors made him wake up. He wanted to get some sleep, but this is exactly what happened now. The servants, like all the other inhabitants of the estate, were sleeping at such a late hour, but even for them the noise seemed too annoying, which was incredibly annoying. That's how the whole house woke up right in the middle of the night. Thanks to what happened, the adults learned that the boys entered the basement to check it for ghosts. The boys sit on their knees with their hands outstretched in the air. Kaiser cannot stretch out his left hand, so he sits looking displeasedly at the floor. This punishment seemed deserved. Dante frowns. She doesn't understand why she was also assigned to them if she didn't even intend to go there, much less believed in ghosts that didn't exist. No matter how much the lady thinks about the person who seemed to them, this is just a mirage that turned out to be unreal. She didn't want to believe such nonsense. Clarifying about the mirage, the prince notices the fact that it is usually seen only in deserts, but the princess refutes this fable. They say that if there is a big difference in air temperatures in a place, you can see something like this. Hoping that this is exactly what his sister says, the blonde sighs heavily. He doesn't want to encounter something like that again. Turning to his interlocutor, the guy notices that the girl missed something, thereby forgetting about what happened. A mirage, due to the refraction of light, reflects objects in another place in the air. Most likely, it was reflecting some kind of portrait, but the brunette did not see any paintings in the basement. Everything seemed even more confusing than before. The young man smiles triumphantly, although he himself is now wildly scared. There was nothing there that could be reflected in the air, thereby creating a shadow. Smiling her characteristic mocking smile, the blonde nods. Goosebumps ran down her arms because of the fear that enveloped her entire body with a slight chill. In her second life, Renatus met a ghost, held hands with the kids, and now spent the entire night apologizing to whoever they disturbed with their arrival. Interrupting the suffering of the young heirs, Hamilton clarifies whether they mean the same ghost in the basement that so diligently pursued them. Smiling, the brunette says that he heard about the tiles that are laid out in white and blue colors at the bottom of the canal. Almost all members of the ducal family know that it is she who gives such a strange reflection. Asking again, the prince almost stutteringly clarifies whether this is definitely not a ghost. The servant cannot believe that the children believed this story, so he laughs lightly. Saying that at least his friends have a fun memory, the man notices strange expressions on their faces. They show contempt and anger at the same time. This is how the story of friendship between three young people who had nothing in common began. An unspoken rule appeared: never, ever disclose that story to anyone. Later, after people asked how they met, the couple always reminisced about that day. Even after the questions, the friends stood firm, not about to divulge what they had agreed never to tell anyone. This was prohibited. This idea came to the mind of Kaiser, who understood that adults would constantly laugh at what happened. No more mistakes could be made. Over time, the prince's left arm almost healed, returning to normal. Around the same time, the summer solstice festival began in Alpentis, where the duchy was located, which I wanted to attend. Turning to Ferescu, the young man asks if they have already been to the festival. If so, I would like to know if they liked it, or if it's all empty advertising. Turning away, the blonde asks the guy to leave her alone without interfering with her doing what she wants. The constant questions sometimes irritated me more than anything else. Quickly jumping off the thick tree on which the hero had been sitting all this time, he asks why the girl doesn't want to go anywhere, to which he simply receives the answer, "I don't want to." Sighing, the beauty understands that at the festival people are divided into only two types. One of them is more harmless because these are children, and the other is pickpockets who can take anything out of their pockets. There is also a third type, little pickpocket kids, who turn out to be even more agile than adult thieves, who are not so nimble. Jumping in place, the brunette reminds the princess that she is also a child, because she is one of the youngest. Interrupting the skirmish, Leonard says that the village has absolutely nothing to see. The young man has never seen a festival for the middle strata of society, and Hamilton forbids him to go there alone, which means he needs to find some company for himself the next evening, thereby hitting the mark. Perhaps the teacher will allow all three of them to go there, so Leonard, as usual, is right in proposing his candidacy. Dante should be excluded from their plans because she is simply lazy. Apart from teaching Leonard, Helena is too lazy to do absolutely everything in this life. No one knows that she had to work hard while trying to achieve the status of empress in her past life. The prince sincerely feels sorry for Leonard because his sister is his mentor. It turns out that everything is completely wrong because Feresca is an excellent teacher of all arts. The blonde does not know how to lie, thereby proving that it is true. Putting her sword forward, the girl assures that they better not joke with her. She will not go to any festivals, even if they send her by force. Turning to his sister, Leonard smiles his innocent smile, which makes the heroine's heart melt. This view, as usual, makes you change your mind. Sighing heavily, the girl realizes that everything is lost. The boy had a truly incredible gift of persuasion without even opening his mouth to say anything. While at the market, the couple examines another stall with vases, saying that the saleswoman has good abilities in works of art. Approaching the guys, the girl asks why they brought the Viscount here and then suddenly ran away from him. It was mean, but also quite fun. It turns out that if the innocent Hamilton is accused of losing his charges, he will also find himself helpless, just like they once were after his stories. It seems that the prince's head can only come up with something so bad that it seems like he has no heart. Perhaps he just doesn't feel sorry for the teacher at all. In fact, Renatus has no idea how bad their relationship is. He grumbles even about simple things and is very annoying, making him constantly want to hide. One can understand the emperor's feelings, but the Viscount is also right in some ways. He does all this because someone has been following his friends for the last hour, hiding in the corners. After the guys broke up with Hamilton, the princess continues to feel a strange presence. It was clear from the start that well-dressed children walking around unattended would become bait for the bad guys. Either it will be a pickpocket or a kidnapper who will turn out to be someone who will demand a ransom. The girl is more than confident that she will be able to resist, but no one knows how it will end. The blonde man is completely invisible in order to understand that he is dressed quite richly, which means he is neither the first nor the second category. The next second, the couple made eye contact. The girl freezes, trying to understand how she could make such a terrible mistake. The young man openly looks at the beauty, who understands that that energy belonged to him. Noticing the princess's concentrated gaze, the figure immediately disappears around the bend. Taking off, Dante thinks only that she cannot lose sight of the man. Her future will depend on this, so on the go, asking the couple to stay on their own, She promises that she will return soon. Running around the corner, Helena brakes sharply, hoping that she will understand where the young man who was just here and then simply disappeared suddenly went. Walking into the distance along the alley, the blonde looks around. The figure really seemed to have disappeared despite the fact that the alley is quite long. A man's voice is heard from behind. The young man introduces No, kneeling on one knee before greeting the princess, who does not immediately understand who is addressing her. Bouncing sharply and turning sideways, the beauty tries to move away as far as possible. This guy is pretty quick to end up somewhere behind so quickly. The man straightens his hair. He really wanted to meet the girl. His comment seems surprising, but he notices that his friend has grown up to be incredibly beautiful. His cheeks turn red. Taking a few more steps, the girl squints. She doesn't know this man, and although he has no reason to attack, the heroine will still have a strange feeling. The blonde begins to cry, talking about how he was only waiting for the birth of his empress, who would be his savior in the future. He felt really bad without her. Continuing to sob, the man thinks out loud about why time passes so slowly. He mentions someone else, but Helena's questions prevent him from finishing his sentence. Screams are heard from the street, because friends are clearly looking for Heiress. Rising from his knee, the guy wipes his face, saying that very soon he will come to the princess again. Turning around, he is about to leave, once again promising that before everything is over, he will be able to visit the empress to tell her the desired story of his life. Starting to run, the girl tries to catch up with the stranger so that he can explain more clearly without any problems. The guy called her Queen, which means he knows that in a past life the girl was Dante. The prince, who arrived almost on time, grabs Helena's hand, trying to pull her friend back. Everything she did was incredibly dangerous, which the girl did not pay attention to at all. Breaking free, the blonde is about to run away, but they don't let her go. Kaiser seems crazy at the moment because he's frustrating the plans of the girl, who doesn't seem to understand why it's impossible to talk to that person. Looking around, Renatus realizes that the man has disappeared into the air again, as if in 1 second, leaving behind only dust that slowly settles to the ground. The beauty looks at one point, unable to find the strength to believe what is happening. It seems that something is threatening her existence, without making it clear what exactly is wrong. Asking what the man did, the brunette starts screaming because the answer nothing did not suit him. The atmosphere was completely different, making it clear that the guy was going to cause harm. Grabbing the princess's wrist, the young man pulls her closer to him, stopping absolutely any attempts to escape. Trying to justify herself, Renatus says that she was only asked for directions, and she showed it. The beauty understands that they are worried about her, but there is no need to be angry. Frowning, Kaiser nods. What has been said still does not seem convincing, but there is simply no strength left to argue any further. It looks like they didn't believe the girl. Even the heroine herself understands that such an excuse seems ridiculous, but there was no time to find a plausible legend. Asking to let go of her hand, Helena realizes that it will leave a bruise. After instructions, the young man can do whatever he wants. Grabbing her wrist, the blonde pretends to stroke the place where she was being held, continuing to assure that the stranger did not tell her anything. Leonard offers to go further to the fair, to which the prince asks to find Hamilton because the time has come to unite. The boy himself just recently ran away from him, and now he offers to look for the Viscount without even knowing where he is. Sighing, the young man talks about the carriage. Every time Kaiser does this, the teacher is waiting for him near the carriage, exactly where they separated. This means that the boy ran away more than once. The brother offers to go call the man, but the brunette interrupts him. If he is left alone with the princess, they will definitely quarrel. Offering them to go together, the girl tries to ignore the questions looming on Leonard's face. If No is still around, you can't miss your chance. Twitching with anger, the young man sighs. She is going to wait completely alone, and obviously, when the stranger offered her candy, she is going to immediately follow him to her certain death. Reminding again that the man was just asking for directions, the heroine realizes that they are not listening to her. The guy promises that he will quickly run there and back because the carriage is very close from here. Losing sight, His Highness leaves his brother and sister completely alone. It turned out as if they were simply using it for their own purposes. Turning to Helena, the blonde clarifies for the last time whether everything is all right. Stroking her head, The young man realizes that nothing threatened her health or life. Hugging his sister, Leonard agrees, because words always have meaning, but this does not change the fact that he is incredibly worried. He thought that the girl was injured, because she did not come here of her own free will. Sighing quietly, the girl admits that her brother is the best in the world. He is sweet and calm, unlike the one who, although he is the same age, gets angry when things don't go according to his plan. Snuggling up to the guy, the beauty thanks him for the care that he tirelessly gives, while never asking for anything in return. Empress or not, it doesn't matter. Surely yesterday's man was just another crazy person who couldn't control himself. You can simply forget about what happened in order to continue living a calm life. Still in the embrace, the girl relaxes. Now even the energy that followed the girl has disappeared. She was here from the very beginning, and only now it seemed to have disappeared somewhere. If the young man was hanging around intending to get closer, now would be the time to do it. But if he disappeared from the moment Kaiser separated, then this is a bad sign. Tearing herself away from her brother, the blonde looks into his eyes with horror. The realization came too late, despite everything that had happened recently. She should have known. The prince found himself in danger, without knowing it, heading towards certain death, which most likely awaits him if someone does not dare to save him. The girl was too frivolous. People had a choice, either a princess who was nothing, or a prince who, although he had lost his power, was still in line for the throne and who, of course, would be attacked. They don't see his highness, but the girl is more than sure that he was dragged into the brothel. There is no one there during the day, so you can easily hide someone. Breaking into a run, the beauty heads towards the very house we were talking about. The virgin was not just confident, because she knew for sure that the guy would be there. Giving instructions, the girl asks her brother to go find the Viscount, while Helena heads to the brothel. This can be dangerous, but there is no way out. Trying to convince his sister, Leonard offers his candidacy to go to the place where his friend is being held. Still remaining unshakable, the beauty refuses the next proposal. The boy runs much faster than she, which means he will be more useful in another place. Fresca sighs. He cannot help, given the real arguments presented. My sister never lied or said nonsense, so it was worth believing. Helena promises that she won't do anything wrong, knowing full well that she will have no choice but to attack first and risk her life. The blonde listens, so she's not going to get into trouble. If anything happens to Kaiser, the Duke's family will also be destroyed. The best thing to do would be to just calmly check the location and wait for the Viscount. The girl is tormented by the remorse that haunts her. If her friend isn't okay, she won't leave it that easily, even if she has to swing her sword. Passing by houses, the beauty carefully examines each one for a closed room in which the prince could be. Something very nearby attracts your attention. Running towards one of the alleys, Dante realizes that the sound is coming from one of the houses. The front door will remain incredibly dangerous, so you need to quietly go through the back. Sneaking further and stopping near the door, the girl listens intently to the sounds coming from the house. It seems there is someone there. Running her hand through her hair, the beauty feels for the hairpin that has saved her life more than once. She helps to get inside the room. Carefully making her way into the corridor, the maiden slowly moves forward, trying to make as little sounds as possible that could be heard from behind the creaking floor. Voices are heard in the nearest room, offering options for reprisals against the prince. A knife definitely won't do, because then everyone will understand that he was killed. The girl freezes, listening to the horror that is coming very close. They want to make it look like an accident, so they're going to throw the guy into the river. Smirking, the man leans towards the prince, who tries to move away as far as possible. After the rainy season, there was enough water to stage it as if the guy was playing on the shore and accidentally fell. Looking through the gap between the door and the wall, the beauty examines the room. Kaiser is very close, which means everything is in perfect order. Most likely, this is not just a kidnapping, and even if it is not entirely clear whose orders they are acting on, it becomes clear that there is still time. When planning to throw the young man into the river, the killers will wait until nightfall. It looks like the kid still hasn't come to his senses, so he's trying to resist. Obviously, the young man still did not understand that he would be killed very soon. One of the attackers throws a nightstand into the wall next to the prince. The plan doesn't seem so good anymore because Kaiser keeps screaming. If they throw him into the river and he gets out alive, then it will be bad for everyone, especially the one who ordered this murder. There are no other options left except to kill the brunette, who backs away in horror even further, unable to do anything because of his tied hands. With his insolence, the prince allowed Helena to determine his location, but at this rate they will not be able to wait for the Viscount. You need to lure one out, and at that moment get rid of the second. Moving closer to the wall in search of the necessary furniture, the girl grabs the legs of a chair, which she subsequently swings at one of her rivals. The men clearly did not expect something like this, so without having time to react, they turn away in order to look at the person attacking them. The sound in the corridor makes the guys shy away. They didn't need witnesses, so one of them was sent to check the situation. Someone threw the stool onto the floor with all their might. Baring his teeth angrily, the blonde sighs. Something happened too suddenly, not making it clear who exactly appeared here and how. It looks strange. Grabbing the leg that was torn from the chair, the girl pushes forward with pressure. Due to the difference in height, it will be very difficult to hit the vital organs, thereby buying yourself time. Still, it's not worth giving up, so Helena hits the knees from the other side, which causes incredible pain to the enemy, which breaks out along with screams. Turning around, the blonde tries to find the one who dealt the striking blow, forcing him to fall to his knees, knocking off all his knuckles and skin. The prince moves to the side, freezing due to the fact that he already understood that the end had come for him, but the stranger saved him, giving him another chance. With another blow, the girl causes the opponent to fall to the ground with his face, which probably received a lot of damage that will not be able to heal. The boy is almost crying, quietly calling Helena by name. She somehow made her way into a house located on the outskirts of the city, saving a friend. Without answering any questions, the blonde runs closer and picks up the guy, saying that they need to leave as soon as possible. Very soon another young man will arrive here and cause a lot of problems. Without wasting a moment, the couple runs out into the corridor, quickly realizing that the journey is becoming something of an obstacle. A brunette can be seen in the distance, who just recently went to check other rooms. There is no time to think, so Renatus turns in the other direction. She had thought of everything, so she left the back door open. It is worth staying as far away from the enemy as possible. Starting the race, the children head towards the exit, hoping that this will help them escape. They say that if a person is brought into the dragon's lair, one must think clearly to carry away his bones. The gaze is directed to the door, which is only a few meters away. If they can just get out of there, it will be the biggest victory. Just about to let go of the stick in order to speed up, the maiden abruptly changes her mind on this matter. A strange stomp is heard behind the door. Freezing for a split second, the blonde sighs quietly. It could be Leonard and the Viscount, or they could face a misfortune that would ruin everything. The doors swing open, and a huge big man appears, who is not going to enter. His head does not fit into the doorway, precisely because of his height, which once again proves his strength. Jumping back, the girl realizes in horror that all this time there was another person here who was now making it clear that they were not going anywhere else. A man who stopped behind asks why this couple hoped so much for salvation. The servant must stop them at all costs. Smirking, the big man overloads the exit. Grabbing the scabbard, the man slowly pulls out a sword, which this time is no longer wooden, but a real one, which can cause many wounds. The hand itself squeezes the chair leg, which now seems like a completely useless thing, even if 5 minutes ago it helped neutralize one of the opponents. Rushing into battle, the guy shouts that they're going to die. He will teach them a lesson so that the Duchess will not even think about escaping and saving her worthless friend, who is not capable of anything. Dodging, the brunette hits Kaiser directly, leaving a long wound on his back. It seems too painful to even watch, let alone experience. Gritting his teeth, the young man tries to remain courageous, so he orders Helena to run away from here as quickly as possible in order to at least save his life. The girl doesn't have time to answer anything because the guy's body bends over and falls on her, forcing her to back away. The prince falls to his knees and then into the Duchess's arms. There is noise all around due to a squabble that is just beginning. The leader accuses his subordinate of wounding His Highness with a sword, because it does not look like an accident. All this time the girl was hugging her friend, but now, raising her hand, she notices that a scarlet stain appears on her snow-white skin, which comes from her clothes. The pupils shrink, and the eyes display horror that cannot be confused with anything. The princess realized too late how bad things were. The guy who had been following the couple all this time overtakes them, grabbing the girl's hair. The whole thing went down the drain because of a stranger who came literally out of nowhere. No longer wanting to put up with the kidnappers, who seemed to absolutely not care what or with whom to do, Dante raises his hand, thereby tearing his hair out of his hands. Throwing the man away with the sharp corner of a stick, the girl only hears his cries about how much pain he is in. He can no longer withstand such bullying. The brunette, who has almost lost consciousness, tries to look directly at his girlfriend, who seems to be furious. She, as expected, was not going to put up with such an attitude. At least in this life, the blonde wanted to be peaceful. But even here, some strange people ruined everything, forcing her to change her mind. Grabbing her weapon, the girl looks menacingly at those who dare to touch one of her relatives. Now they must prepare for the worst possible outcome. Leonard really did his best. He ran as quickly as possible to find the Viscount, but everything ended very unfavorably. Hamilton hoped that they would make it in time, but the girl turned out to be much faster. There was no choice left, so she got rid of the garbage, which carried out the assassination attempt much faster. The man clutches his head, terrified. The girl confronted all these people alone, considering that one of them was 3 times her size, carrying a real sword. Looking around to once again make sure that his eyes do not deceive him, the Viscount looks into the princess's eyes, asking who she even is. Helena silently wipes her face from the blood that runs down her cheek. She can no longer make out which of the dead left their imprint, but that doesn't matter. Renatus did it all without any effort. After the incident, the beauty was sick for more than 3 days. The load was too much, but it was worth it. Luckily, the kidnappers survived, but they were sent to the capital, so it doesn't bode well for them. Those people will pay a price for daring to touch a member of the imperial family. The king was not going to leave the matter just like that. That day was still incredibly grueling, forcing the girl to forget about everything around her. But most importantly, Kaiser survived. There is no longer any threat. At first it seemed that there would be no more problems, but Fresca had to listen to a long lecture from his father, who was amazed at how everything had turned out. Inviting the girl into the office, the father sits her on the chair opposite, asking if she knows why she was called. From the expression on his face, one could say that everything was obvious here. There is a silence in the office that puts pressure on the ears. The Virgin does not have a worthy answer, even if deep down she knows the reason. Smiling, the blonde jokes, saying that they just want to thank her for the fact that His Highness returned home safely. The man does not seem to share his youngest daughter's humor. Frowning, he sighs, hoping that the girl will no longer joke with such a thing, instead of being in a serious mood. Humor was never Dante's strong suit because in the end the prince did not return completely unscathed. His back was crippled, so there was no point in joking. Lowering his head onto his hand, the blonde sighs. They are worried not at all because of how she is acting at the moment, but because Helena seems to be an unusual child who has powers. Humming, the blonde says that she understands all the experiences. Perhaps the Duke is afraid that because of her unusualness, the princess will suppress her brother and seize the dukedom, to which she is answered with only no. This man knows his child too well. In fact, Helena just stands out too much. As soon as more people find out about this, the Virgin may get involved in very dangerous matters, which will then come back to haunt her. Even if a smart girl is heading towards something, hoping that she will be able to save her friend, her parents still cannot be delighted that the beauty herself ran to the kidnappers who wanted to kill her. Unfortunately, my father's words were true. He just, like his mother, worried about his daughter, protecting her in every possible way from misfortunes and adversity, but there was nothing to say. In his past life, the father found the most interesting story about how a woman sealed away an evil dragon that terrorized everyone around her, which was quite normal for him. It turns out that Viscount Noct now also wants to take the girl with him to the capital. It seems that another person similar to the master in the past has appeared because he wants to hire a teacher and train the princess properly. The man didn't find anything special, but after he saw the girl in action, he sharply changed his mind. She could become an outstanding knight and protector. The Duke never wanted to put pressure on his daughter, making her feel worse than usual. If she agrees to this, then everyone around her will definitely recognize her as a special child. As a parent, a man is not sure whether this is right or wrong. There are too many pros and cons in your head that need to be overcome. The blonde is only interested in what the guy is going to do. The beauty is sure that the life of the special child that the interlocutor is talking about will be far from the quiet life that the princess has been dreaming about for many years. She had had enough experiences in the past. Everything would be simpler, but the virgin has not been able to find anything interesting for a long time. A quiet life still remains a dream, but this does not affect it in any way. Whatever the beauty did over the years, it did not give her any fun at all. Only the way Leonard began to swing his sword after their lessons became exactly that pearl of joy in his second life. Thinking a little about how she could respond to the proposal, the main character asks to be allowed to teach her brother how to wield a sword, which will become her outlet. Nodding, the Duke agrees. He understood what exactly his daughter wanted, even if he was not immediately going to give her something like that. Freezing in anticipation, the girl almost jumps out of her chair. You can see lights of joy in your eyes, splashing next to each other. Now, after a long time, the woman will be able to do what she wants. In her past life, such a choice was not given, because in order to survive, she had to overcome a lot. Battles became her outlet, but now life promised to be much more comfortable and quiet, while using a sword, which was her best friend. The father gave permission, so any reason to defeat Kaiser was gone. Previously, everything was much more complicated, but it's worth forgetting about it. It's time to visit the prince after what happened. Virgo still feels a lump of guilt that still won't go away, even if she would like to. The boy was injured because the knight doubted. The girl does not understand where the boy with his hands tied got the courage to cover his girlfriend with his body, thereby saving her from being wounded in the stomach. Sighing heavily, the girl leans on the door with her hands. Nothing will come of what she has in mind, so she should just go back and not bother her friend. She didn't notice the prince next to her at all. Announcing his presence, the boy asks where she is going to go. He doesn't quite understand what happened and why his friend is so upset. Without letting her anger out, the blonde asks why Kaiser wanders the corridors so late instead of sleeping. He just couldn't sleep, but ended up catching his girlfriend doing some important nightly things. Walking into the room, the guy sits down on the sofa. Smirking, he assumes that the girl was going to do something daring with him while he sleeps, thereby giving himself a chance, which is delusion. Leaning back on the bed, the young man turns over. His wound is almost fine, despite the heavy loss of blood. The place seems to be burning, but he can move freely, helping himself in his actions. Sighing, the girl says that the young man now probably won't be able to get married. There has long been a legend that the groom must have an easygoing character and smooth skin. Getting out of bed, the blonde walks from side to side, pretending to lament that now the young man will not be able to get married. She could say that she was very sorry, but that was not the case at all. Trying to resist, the prince assures that his friend will also not be able to get married, to which she nods her head. She doesn't have to choose, because her brother promised to take care of her until she is old. Turning away, the boy almost screams in horror because he does not want to accept such rules of the game. If everything turns out this way, the heroine will have to take full responsibility for what happened. The refusal is not long in coming because the girl would have a headache, even though she gets a headache from everything she does. Smiling, the blonde sighs. Still, bullying the emperor is a lot of fun, so you need to quickly come up with something else to cheer yourself up. Sitting back down on the bed, the girl calls out to Kaiser. She's been worried about something lately, and it's because the patient's face is too exhausted and looks too bad. Approaching the boy, the heroine asks how he sleeps. It seems that the old problem has returned, bringing with it many troubles, so the young man cannot sleep. Nodding quietly, the guy mutters something under his breath, hoping that he will eventually be heard. Things really were worse than ever, even if the hero tried to sleep. The real problem was that the prince was afraid. Every night he was tormented by nightmares that did not allow him to think about anything. He was afraid to return to the imperial palace. Curling into a ball, Kaiser hugs himself with his arms, saying that all people intend to kill him. This is not true, but there was still some truth to it, because the assassination attempt was committed quite recently. The blonde carefully examines the young man, who began to shake. His nerves are starting to fray, and if he doesn't get help, the whole situation may only get worse after everything that happened. Gently tugging at the blanket, the beauty reminds that there are people in the world who want to protect it. The Viscount and Duke are among those who definitely care. Jumping up, the young man illuminates his face, along which tears flow in a stream. He does not want any throne, because a quiet and peaceful life would be much better and more valuable than anything else in this world. Sighing, the heroine admits that this was expected. He is only 14 years old, which makes him worry about everything around him, especially when the guy does not know the future. The hand furiously squeezes the blanket, while the owner, trying to calm down, breathes heavily. He never succumbed to pressure, and all this time he tried to be what was expected of him. Time passed, and the fortress fell, because the brunette was just a child. He simply broke down because of those who wanted to get rid of the prince. Realizing that support is the only thing that really matters right now, the girl quietly calls Kaiser's name, hoping to attract his attention. It certainly won't get any easier, because even if the young man renounces the throne, the attackers will still have reasons to worry. They will try to kill the prince at any cost. Shuddering, the brunette stares in horror at his interlocutor. I don't want to believe the horror that could happen, but as long as Kaiser remains the crown prince, there remain those who intend to protect their owner at any cost. This is exactly what the princess learned in her past life. Every action was taken from reality, because this is how the girl got rid of her stepbrothers and sisters. Sitting up in bed, the brunette grabs his head with his hands. It seems that he is now backed into a corner and is in the most hopeless position imaginable. Smiling, the girl assures that there is nothing complicated here. Kaiser is first in line to the throne, which means he should simply become emperor. Nobody knows that Dante was already an empress. Screaming, the boy says that it is much more difficult. A friend thinks this way because it doesn't apply to her, but she knows what to talk about and knows how to help. Opponents need to be shown that if they in any way touch the prince, then their lives will also come to an end. The more they push you into a corner, the more you need to come forward to show everyone around you what you are worth. The boy will not be able to do what he is asked to do. He is not as strong as a master, so he has no idea how to face others. One has only to object because the future emperor is much stronger. He saved his girlfriend, risking his life, even knowing that this could not end well. Reaching out her hand, Helena intertwines her fingers. Boys are really much stronger, so they simply have to become emperor without running away to hide away from the others. Determined to encourage her friend even more, Heiress promises that she will never leave him, ensuring that he becomes emperor in the future. Memories of that day come to mind when the maiden sitting opposite deftly dealt with everyone around, snatching the sword from the enemy's hands and then taking his life. He can definitely be calm. Still not letting go of the girl's palm, as if this is the last salvation, the young man nods, saying, "Thank you. All that remains is to sincerely rejoice and hope for a good future." After everything that happened, the couple went to sleep next to each other in the same bed. Dante didn't want to leave her friend in such a sad situation, especially knowing that he wouldn't be able to sleep without someone next to him. That night was long and terrible, but left alone, they were able to overcome everything in the world. The wound Kaiser received on his back faded over time and became an invisible scar. He clearly had a complex about the way he looked now, but his girlfriend was always there to cheer up the prince. Until the very last moment, Hamilton tried to persuade the princess to go with them to the capital, but the girl's father firmly refused, forcing the Viscount to fall behind. Saying goodbye to His Highness, the brother and sister bow down, asking that the guy return home without any problems. They really hope to see each other very soon. Looking at the young man with a warm gaze, the girl seems to promise that everything will be fine, even without any words, which in this case turned out to be useless. Kaiser smiles back, realizing that now he should be more careful and at the same time persistent in order to achieve his goals and not let Dante down. Coming closer to Helena, the brunette asks her about the students, even if he knows very well that the only student is Leonard, who has achieved good success. Nodding, the girl says that for now this is the only person she spends time with, because this is the easiest way to concentrate. Making a pleading expression on his face, the prince asks that Heiress also take up his sword training, which he might need as a future emperor. The servants, in shock, just like other family members, goggle, hoping that they were just imagining things. The girl will not be able to go to the capital, so there will be no point in this. There is no need to worry about moving anywhere, because the prince will come to the duke every summer to take 3 months of fencing lessons. Asking him to keep his promise, the brunette reminds him that his friend said that she would be with him until he reaches the very top of the pyramid, ascending to the throne that was intended for him. Frowning, the beauty makes it clear what to plan, however. Without keeping herself waiting for long, she nods and, smiling, agrees, because from the very beginning there was no point in refusing. Extending her hand, the heroine shakes her opponent's palm as a sign of agreement. She will be a little rough, but will still try to remain gentle in teaching, which remains an important part. From the very moment, noise came into the girl's life, which had been missing in her boring life for so long. That summer was short, but at the same time long because of everything that happened. The estate regained its peace and quiet. The prince left the duchy, returning back to the capital, where he was about to begin his reforms and advancement to the throne. A maid enters the room, who has been waiting for a long time to be let in. Lord and mistress were busy with something, so they did not immediately invite the maid inside. Taking out a piece of paper with a beautiful seal, the woman holds out a letter, asking them to read it as soon as possible. The sender was unknown. Opening the paper, the girl realizes that it came from Gray. He promised to come to the estate next month, so he asked him to tidy up his room and finally remove the strange curtains from the windows. The blonde sighs. As usual, the letter contained no formal greetings. In addition to all this, the guest room became his for some time, despite the fact that no one signed the agreement. Coming closer, Leonard looks over the princess's shoulder. He clarifies who the letter is from, noting how quickly time flies, which can no longer be stopped. Summer came too quickly, despite the fact that this year everything seemed completely different. It had been exactly 3 years since the couple met Kaiser, which seemed crazy. Looking at how hot the sun was, my brother was sure that this season would be hot. Everyone just wanted to be in the shade, even if summer had not yet begun. The princess, as usual, had too much to do in the city. She was always busy, and now her life no longer seemed boring and completely meaningless. A middle-aged man says that the order is almost ready. After Leonard won several local competitions, the girl began to be called Princess Mentor, which added to her status. Handing out the boxes, the guy offers to check the collected order. One of them belonged to the prince and the second to the Princess Mentor. Opening the chest, the seller reveals 2 beautifully crafted swords made of pure silver. They were needed for new sparring sessions. While examining the goods, Helena is interrupted because the man says that the Perel family told her because their son wants to learn fencing, and only Dante, the most capable of all teachers, is nearby. Grunting, the girl takes the sword out of its sheath, carefully inspecting the work, which was almost a perfect option. It looks like the master did his best as usual. The son of the Perel family was also an exhibit. Last year he made fun of the princess by ordering her to go play with dolls instead of taking on the betrothal of her peers. The thing was made even better than expected. The sword turned out to be short and light, thereby adapting to the fight, which promised to be more comfortable. It is impossible not to admit that the weapon is as beautiful as an accessory. Unfortunately, the girl didn't have much time, so she could forget about the hopeless students she didn't want to take on. The master also asked to tell the boy to go play with dolls. Turning to leave the room, the woman says goodbye, stopping and waiting for the maid to hand over a large bag of gold for excellent work. The beauty had a beautiful sword and the best mood, which immediately evaporated. Going out into the street, the blonde freezes, looking at how the child snatches her wallet. Recoiling, the mistress almost falls due to how difficult it becomes to maintain her balance, which is completely absent. The shoe slips on the cold stones. The maid who was nearby runs closer to the mistress in horror, swaying from side to side. She seems to be even closer to nervous than the princess, who silently looks into the distance. She felt it was a pickpocket. Turning out her pockets, the girl says that she was robbed. Screaming in horror, the woman suggests immediately reporting to the security detachment, which will immediately go on a search. There were only a few coins that don't have that much value. Helena did similar things in her past life, but still, when it comes to her, it's a little annoying. The girl carefully unties the bandage that was used to hold the beautiful hat on her head. It provided cover from the sun, but it would obviously get in the way when running. The heroine takes off because she decides to find the pickpocket herself. Such children can be incredibly heaps, but you should worry more about them because a virgin in a fit of anger can kill someone. The servants freeze in complete shock, just like the seller. It seems that everyone took this as reality, which means that jokes are still not what the Duchess should do. Using logic, the girl finds the place where the street children are hiding, which becomes easier than ever. The guys are trying to figure out if Rose really hid something from the aristocrat's wallet, which she denies. Laughing, the guy says that she of course steals, even if she denies it in every possible way. The fact that the maiden is from the Bonds family does not mean anything at all, because she could not beg for money. Putting her hands forward, the girl declares that she borrowed money because the nobility have plenty of it, while she really needed it. The brunette is saying some nonsense. The blonde, as she knew, that the pickpocket would come here to give money to the older street children, because the princess herself also had the same things at times in her past life. It seems that the thief is talking about the Duchy of Bonds, which has been heard about for many years. They were distinguished by their wealth. The family had an impeccable reputation, but the Duchess was sure that they did not have a little daughter. It remained a mystery how this happened, because the Count also had blue hair. This girl is most likely illegitimate, like Dante herself, who had a very bad time in her past life due to the fact that her own father abandoned her as a child. These people make the girl remember only bad things, and this is a problem because older guys beat the girl to establish discipline. Going down and hitting the leader, the beauty pulls out her wallet. Today is exactly the day to use the sword that is meant for fighting. Grabbing the hand which has turned red, the brunette jumps to the side, asking who it is. The guys standing behind stop and look at the princess in surprise. Smiling, the blonde assures them that she is the owner of the wallet that was stolen from her. She is not going to return the purse, which rightfully belongs only to her. It seems that the people around him do not understand normal language. So, hoping to use forbidden means, the girl suddenly steps on the guy's foot with her heel. The head falls to the floor, clutching his foot. The princess does not convey any message, just asking to be treated with respect, because she is older than all of them here combined. Grabbing each other, the street children evaporate at the speed of light. According to them, the lady was clearly crazy, so the best idea was to just do her feet as quickly as possible, walking off into the sunset. Children today are too cowardly. They didn't even try to fight for what they managed to get, so there was nothing more to talk about with them. All but one person were truly missing. There remained only a girl from the Bonds clan, who, clutching a stone, looked angrily at the enemy. Most likely the child is going to attack, which later happens. Picking up another stone, the brunette rushes into the fray, ordering her wallet back. Carefully jumping to the side, the blonde asks what the problem is, because she purchased the little thing, to which she is answered in an extremely rude manner. The girl stole the wallet herself, thereby earning her living. Stopping her rival, the lady offers a deal. If the girl can hit the princess at least once, she will give all her money from her purse. Not believing her happiness and the words spoken by her interlocutor, Bonds hesitantly asks again, hoping that this is true, because she really needed the money. The condition is not so simple, because if the maiden surrenders, she will become a servant who will be obliged to serve the Duchess on the estate. Laughing lightly and breathing heavily, the brunette nods in agreement. Such conditions more than suit her, because she still doesn't know who exactly she's dealing with. Noticing the enlargement of her pupils, the blonde notices the fact that her rival's gaze has become more piercing. This is what was needed, because the heroine knew in advance that she would be left with the winnings. The attack will have no effect, and this becomes clear from the first seconds of the battle. Easily dodging stones that fly in a hail to the side, the beauty tries not to show how easy it is for her. The hand rises into the air to catch the handle of the sword, which has been attached to the back all this time. Convenience allows you to make every move faster. Jumping to the side, the Duchess launches into a counterattack that is almost impossible to counter for an inexperienced fighter like Bonds, who screams helplessly. By lightly waving the weapon in such a way as not to hit the girl, the aristocrat adds fuel to the fire by saying that the thief cannot do anything to her. She did not expect the princess to attack, but she did not say that this would not happen. Dodging again to avoid being hit, the brunette screams that it was a trick not worthy of being used. Hiding her face in her hands and trying to defend herself from the attacker, the girl asks to stop. She was wrong, so even after what happened, she admits the mistake she made. Kneeling down, the lady asks for forgiveness and promises that she will no longer steal the aristocrat's things, to which she nods. A Bonds family man can't steal anyone's things. Bursting with bitter tears, the brunette begs her to forgive her for saying something she shouldn't have. She's just an illegitimate child who doesn't even know what the Count looks like. Folding her hands on the sword, which she places on the ground, the lady, not at a loss, quietly asks what the name of the heroine is, who tried so hard to hide it. Bowing her head, the girl says her name is Tira. The next question doesn't keep you waiting, so the lady asks about the origin of the name. According to the mother, the street child was named that way even before birth, and it was the Count himself who chose the name, which eventually stuck, even after the man abandoned his family. Holding out the blade, the Duchess gently lifts her interlocutor's chin with the tip, saying that everything is in order. She doesn't seem interested or disappointed because she doesn't care. From now on, the girl will be called Agathe. This new name will be perfect in appearance, helping to forget the old days that were not too rosy. Turning around and heading to the side, the Duchess reminds that she was promised to become her servant if the win is on Dante's side. Now you definitely won't be able to escape your fate. Not quite intending to follow the new owner, the girl asks why they chose her. She was a thief who was suddenly taken into the estate. The answer to this question is even more difficult to find than to answer. Once upon a time, in a past reality, Renatus helped a person who saw something in her. Perhaps this is simply a desire to pay for the shameless life of a street child. Deciding not to reveal the secret, the girl only says that she likes to pick up people on the streets. From that day on, a new family member appeared in the castle. Agathe was a smart child, who in addition to all this, turned out to be not much younger than everyone else on the estate because the girl was 12 years old. The baby quickly learned everything, thanks to which she earned a good reputation among the servants and even quickly got used to the dukedom, thereby showing how capable she was. There was only one but left, because the girl always followed her mistress. She was helping, so one day she simply asked her to tie her shoes, because the Duchess should not do something like that. Otherwise, Agathe noticed dust on her mistress's shoes, so, kneeling down, she offered herself and her dress as a rag for her feet. Going beyond all limits, the maid even tried to feed the princess, saying that she did not have to hold the fork at all. The maid obviously couldn't believe her luck, so she wanted to pay back. The only place where they were not allowed was the training field. The princess asked not to follow her, leaving the girl to wait, like a dog sitting in one place. Leonard, who has been observing this phenomenon for several days now, once again asks if everything will be okay. According to Dante, the maid will soon calm down and will no longer feel guilty. It wasn't that this was a problem at all, but that Kaiser was arriving soon and would probably have a terrible relationship with Agathe, which could be predicted in advance. At that moment, the lady still had to accept that ominous premonition that did not leave her body. That very day came, without foreshadowing any misfortune that happened later. The carriage, which stopped very close to the main entrance, releases His Highness, who greets Helena and Leonard, who, for sure, missed him. The couple freezes with surprised expressions on their faces. They seem unable to find the right words, which flew out of their heads in a split second, no longer allowing them to object. Silence stretches around, which causes discomfort to everyone around, who are trying their best not to show it. This Kaiser is definitely not the one the princess saw last year. It seemed that the guy had shed his chrysalis shell, so the maiden decides to ask how much the prince has grown in general. Putting his hand on the girl's head, the guy says that he is now about 6 feet or even taller. He had grown a lot, just like Leonard. So now, looking at the master, it seemed to him that Helena had shrunk even more. The young man's hands also turned out to be quite huge, resembling the paws of a giant, so by kicking, the beauty forces him to let go of her head and not spoil her hair. Putting her hand forward, the girl hits her friend in the stomach, to which he only laughs. It seems that the character has become even colder since their last meeting. Still, realizing his mistake, the emperor collapses to the ground, clutching his stomach. In this empire, no one except the master treats the crown prince this way, which is simply ridiculous. Rising up, the brunette grins. He likes the duchy precisely because whenever he comes here, everything always remains exactly the same as before, without any changes. The words don't seem to have the same clear effect as before, because the maid comes into view and grabs the princess's arm, glaring angrily at the guy. Sitting in the living room, the couple had been discussing for the second hour that no one could be trusted. The prince could not understand why his friend brought a beggar woman into the house who could steal a lot of things. Humming, the girl says that she does not cause any problems, thereby greatly liking the princess. Kaiser does not agree at all because he cannot do anything about Leonard, but instead now has to worry about the servants. Staring at her interlocutor, the girl asks why he should worry at all. He will only be here for a few months, which is not that long of a number of days. Already starting to scream again, the young man is no longer able to restrain himself. The girl seems too kind to other people who don't deserve it. Interrupting, the brunette asks with interest where the princess is looking all the time during the conversation, who seems not to be taking her eyes off something special. Still not looking up from her contemplation, the blonde says without any embarrassment that she was looking at her interlocutor's hips. The young man freezes, trying to digest the information he has just received. The pupils shrink while the guy tries not to scream. Jumping up, the prince grabs his knees, pressing them closer to himself. The girl has completely gone crazy, although she finds a reasonable explanation for this. Over the course of a year, a friend has developed a lot of muscles, which may be growing due to some kind of sport. The beauty begs to touch her leg just once, completely not noticing Agat, who opens the doors to bring in a cart with tea. Setting the cups down on the table, the brunette also offers sweets that should have been a nice addition. Receiving gratitude, she looks contentedly at the object of her adoration. Not intending to step aside, Agat only comes closer, almost touching his shoulder with the opposite one. Leaning even closer, the girl does not want to go further than a few centimeters from the princess, who does not seem to feel the same delight. Pointing his finger at the door, the young man orders the maid to leave because he and Helena had an important conversation, which in the end did not take place because the guy refused to show his thighs. Stepping forward, the maiden reminds that she must protect her mistress from willful people trying to seduce the princess with their pumped-up thighs. Pulling his legs under him again, the prince shouts that this is complete nonsense, to which Agoth bursts into tears and falls into Dante's lap, telling her that the man is shouting at her. Kaiser has grown big, but still behaves like a 10-year-old child who can't grow up. Rising from the chair, the mistress invites the girl to go to another room and calm down. Smiling, the brunette turns towards the losing man, who now definitely won't be able to do anything as soon as the couple leaves the room. A man, being embarrassed, is no longer able to control his impulses of anger, which are ready to break out and injure everyone around him right now. Realizing that the situation urgently needs to be saved, the young man calls out to Helena, hoping that the girl will give him at least another 10 minutes of her attention. Sitting down on the sofa in the appropriate position, the guy spreads his legs on the floor, pointing at one of them. Dante wanted to touch the muscles so badly, and now she will be given the opportunity. Clarifying her intentions, the beauty receives another consent. They are on very good friendly terms which allow such manifestations of love. Now the victory remains on the side of Kaiser, who looks incredibly proud. He never remains in the red even if it means sacrificing his honor. The look on Agoth's face makes your insides clench. She is ready to cry just because she will now spend less time with her mistress, who has just been distracted. The blonde doesn't remember them being so close, but she certainly won't miss the opportunity that was so easily provided. Sitting down next to him, the girl carefully runs her hand along her leg, feeling the pile of muscles right under her palm. Sports was still something special in His Highness's routine. Blushing, the princess sighs contentedly. The leg seems hard, like a stone, which gives incredible pleasure mixed with admiration. The muscles have already differentiated, even if the prince is only 17 years old. This man is incredible, because even when Renatus was in her prime, she could not boast of such wealth. Smiling, the beauty can't stop doing what she started doing. The prince grew up unnoticed by everyone, allowing others to doubt their abilities. Approaching the guy's ear, the girl asks what Kaiser is going to use. Of course, she was talking about techniques, because with his training set, he could use even high-level techniques without straining his body. Realizing the whole situation too late, the lady moves even closer to the young man. The cheeks turn scarlet, showing embarrassment that reaches right to the ears. Realizing that for the heroine this is a huge awkwardness, like an abyss, the young man asks what is wrong, to which he receives only a crumpled answer, saying that the princess will leave first. After everything the maiden has done, she simply abandons everyone with whom she was here, even rejecting Agoth, who wanted to go with the beauty, but was refused. The scream, which was higher than usual in decibels, made the couple cower and remain in the guest room with surprised expressions on their faces, hoping that everything would end well for them. Running down the corridor, Helena tries to escape not only from the room, but also from her mind. The way she reacted to a simple situation doesn't suit her. The girl simply became embarrassed after she had sufficiently crushed the prince's leg, who himself agreed to this. Dante did not expect that after everything she would feel so bad. The ominous premonition that remained before the carriage arrived turned out to be all too accurate. Kaiser grew up despite the fact that this was normal for a boy of his age. Freezing in the middle of the room, the blonde screams at the top of her voice, trying to release all the accumulated evil that was languishing in her chest as soon as possible. It all seemed like a cruel joke. It takes time to get used to a student who has matured a lot. After that incident, the lady began to avoid Kaiser by hook or by crook. Coming to training, the young man as usual greeted the princess, to which he received nothing in response. Each time, Leonard was the only one who greeted the guy not coldly, but with a smile on his face. He was more friendly, especially since nothing happened between them. It was impossible to believe that everything the maiden feared happened. She was hiding behind her brother, who, not understanding what was happening, simply helped his sister. She could not look His Highness in the eye. During training, the brunette almost begged Helena to look at his stance, which required attention and adjustments. He looked helpless, despite his age and strength. The answer was either ignore or a cold answer. Without even turning to the student, the master said that you need to put your left leg forward and better hold your right one to achieve the result. Now, after what happened, the girl was even embarrassed to touch her friend. This applied to the lessons too, which made them suffer, and Leonardo was confused. Everything that happened was not on purpose. The girl would never have thought that an ordinary desire would turn into a complete disaster that would be impossible to improve. Once again making attempts to talk about everything that happened, the maiden refused to listen. The guy again did not understand what his fault was, so he silently watched as the master moved away into the distance. Now, not only was the princess a sword master, but she was also an adult who had done everything in her past life except for that most important moment. She felt ashamed to look at her friend, with whom she had been friends for a long time. Such moments remained the most pitiful thing that happened in my entire second life, which had already lasted 15 years. The woman just wanted to forget herself and erase her mistake from her memory. Another day passed by, causing tired Helena to fall onto her bed. She is a teacher and must look into the student's face when teaching him fencing, which so far has not been entirely possible. My thoughts are interrupted by a strange sound outside the window, as if something was hitting the glass. Getting up, the maiden opens the doors, hoping that this is not the hired killer they sent her in a past life. Directly below the windows was the prince, who smilingly greets Dante, who does not seem delighted with such an unexpected meeting. A handful of stones that he threw remain in his hand. Turning away, the blonde thinks with annoyance that it would be better if it were a mercenary who would not influence her so much. Just about to go back in, the beauty again hears a man's voice asking them to talk about something incredibly important. Smiling again, the young man tries to win over the teacher for a conversation that obviously, as usual, will not go well. After all the days that have passed in attempts to avoid this, it is worth admitting that it was all in vain. The guy again has an overly mature expression on his face that makes the lady melt. Allowing her friend to crawl through the window, the girl moves towards the bed. Sighing loudly to express her displeasure, the blonde turns in the other direction. Next time you will just need to use a regular front door. As it turned out, Agoth, who still remained overly devoted, remained standing outside the door, intending to guard the princess's chambers to the last, despite the fact that she had sent her to bed. Asking why the young man came at night, the lady tries to avoid conversation or simply throw the young man out of the room. The lady does not admit her mistake because during the day she avoids him. Quietly asking what is wrong, the young man tries to get the answer he needs. Helena suddenly became so cold towards her friend, with whom they had communicated much better before. It seems that Fresca began to hate the one she knew, because now she stopped even looking into his eyes. The reason is completely different, because the young man simply grew up too much, becoming like another person. Laughing like a madman, the interlocutor exclaims, It's not his fault, and it's clear even without confirmation, because the guy can't do anything with his body or mind. In fact, the girl just needs a little more time. She is not going to reject an old acquaintance who has become too dear to her, but it may take time. Kaiser looks worried, confirming his worries by saying that he will only be here for 3 months. They spend less time being apart, so it puts pressure on the mind. The prince never wants to admit his weaknesses, but now he is absolutely serious about the fact that he and Leonard can someday forget about their friend. Coming closer, the heroine carefully sits down next to Kaiser, quietly asking for forgiveness. She has no right to abandon her student, who needs her so much. Looking down at the floor, the interlocutor asks you to swear. He doesn't always use it as something worthwhile, but now the only option left is to save everything. Extending her hand, the beauty interlaces her fingers with the guy's palm. She will never again avoid the one she loves and appreciates so much, no matter what. Helena swears on her heart and admits that she was too insensitive. It doesn't matter what Kaiser looks like now, because he is still a student of his master, who remains the same deep down in his soul. Smiling, the young man nods. Now the situation will only get better because they talked. This should have been done a little earlier, but in that case they would not have realized how much they needed each other. Inviting the guy to have a good sleep in his room, the girl listens to how tired he is, while he was in tension all the previous days, which made themselves felt. Instead of listening to advice, the young man crawls under the covers, leaning back on the pillows. Saying goodnight, he turns in the other direction to begin to fall asleep, not understanding what the prince is reminding, that the princess used to also sleep in his room with the argument that she was too lazy to go somewhere. They used to be children, so everything was allowed, different from what it was now. Grabbing a half shelf, the blonde heads out of the room to lie down on the sofa. Throwing his hands behind his head, the brunette says that the girl has vowed not to avoid him, despite the fact that this is completely different. This man is clearly acting like a child. A friend thought that only his height had increased, but it turned out that his infantilism had also become many times stronger. Not wanting to listen to anything anymore, Kaiser slams his hand on the bed next to him. He wants to sleep, so the Duchess just keeps him very busy. Sighing, the girl doubts the correctness of her decision for a few more seconds. She wouldn't really want to sleep in the same bed with someone after everything that happened, but there was obviously no choice left. Deciding to do what is asked of her, the blonde climbs under the blanket, lying down next to the prince, who cannot take his eyes off, as if he is glued to the heroine. Still looking into the eyes of his interlocutor, the brunette says that now he can definitely remember the old times and how they used to spend time together. Without turning her head, the maiden only looks away, hoping that her silent question will be answered. Back then, a long time ago, they also slept all night in Kaiser's room, after an incident that strengthened their friendship. Almost falling asleep, the man mutters something under his breath. If only he had known that his girlfriend wouldn't like him, he would never have grown up to not embarrass her. Turning away, the girl asks why the guy started talking about this. Words don't seem like anything real or valid. The hands intertwine again, allowing the couple to fall asleep. Kaiser, who surprised everyone with his strong growth, reassured the girl with his unchanging childish character, which still remained with him. Children grow up really fast, and it becomes noticeable when you don't spend much time with them. They began to rely on each other again to feel more at ease. The next day, the lesson began as usual, with shouting and giving instructions to practice the technique. The brother was ordered to use not only the techniques familiar to him. Previously, embarrassment made it impossible to focus on training, so now my efficiency has greatly increased. Every time the friends got together for dinner or for a walk, they did nothing but discuss swords. The two of them improved their skills very quickly, which really only got better and better each time. However, Kaiser, who seemed to not care at all, was no longer willing to pay so much attention to detail. The boy studied much faster than the heroine would have liked, which means she had a lot of paperwork awaiting her in order to redo the entire lesson plan that had already been drawn up, which had already failed. Perhaps the master from a past life felt the same way, but as a teacher, the girl could not skip classes just because of laziness. She was obliged to create new plans, at least a week in advance. The papers became the second curse, which is interrupted by a male voice heard from the side. Greeting the princess, the guy notices the fact that she, as usual, is unusually busy. Smiling, the Viscount asks how the improvement of His Majesty's abilities is going. More than a year has already passed since the start of preparation, so it would be worth asking. It is precisely because of how well Kaiser is developing that the maiden has additional work to do. He is progressing well, but this is due to a good teacher, as well as a training plan for 9 months in the palace. It seems that the girl compiled that list for herself during the absence of training quite well, taking into account all the pros and cons that were in the same plan. Changing the subject, Hamilton thanks the maiden for becoming such a close friend to His Highness, who had absolutely no idea who to hang out with or who to vent to about his experiences. The brunette is incredibly glad that at least in this place, His Majesty, like his peers, chats and even laughs, not paying attention to the pressing problems that surround him. Not understanding what this means, the blonde quietly asks again. The fact that Kaiser laughs and makes noise is not something unusual, because it seemed to his brother and sister that the guy was always like this. In the imperial palace, Gray is known as a completely different person who finds it difficult to be surrounded by people he hates. Because of his behavior, a nickname spread throughout the castle. The man is called a gray wolf, who will tear into pieces and kill anyone who comes even an inch closer to him. He doesn't want to see anyone within a few meters or be disturbed. The words remain a mystery that has never been solved, even after everything that has happened. Memories of that same whiner who almost cried in bed pop up in my head. It turns out that His Highness does not trust anyone, considering everyone around him to be enemies, and therefore does not want to bring friends or acquaintances who could get to know him more. After the incident when a hired killer was sent to the prince, he became even more cruel. Previously, it was just a child who tried not to contact anyone, but recently everything has changed dramatically. Freezing, the blonde tries not to break down in order to ask a million more questions. The man never mentioned the assassin, always saying that everything was fine. In fact, it turned out that the castle did not have the best conditions. It would be better to keep the conversation a secret, because the prince simply does not want to bother anyone with his unnecessary problems. Now the puzzle has fallen into place. It was very difficult for the guy to be in the palace, no matter how hard he tried to hide it. Even after what happened, the young man did not change his decision to become an emperor, showing his reliable side. This all happened thanks to the princess, who once made her contribution by helping the prince realize that giving up is not the best choice, which should simply be abandoned. Hamilton had heard that the girl had made a promise that she would make her friend an emperor who would reign in peace for a long time. At first, the Viscount was worried that Helena was acting purely like a teacher, trying to support the student, but over time the man realized that everything was much better. Bowing, the guy thanks Heiress again, asking that in the future she will continue to take care of His Highness as the most important person in her life and as part of her family. Jumping up from her seat, the blonde hurries to stop what is happening. The servant bows to the girl, despite the fact that she's still very small and does not quite deserve something like that. Leaving the table, Dante also bows in order to at least somehow balance the forces that no longer coincide. Virgo couldn't let this happen. Memories flash through my head of how the blonde begged Kaiser to become emperor no matter what. He had to take care of his future and the empire. Now recalling what happened and adding it to what was said quite recently, the girl thinks that this promise was too thoughtless. It is incredibly difficult for the prince. But in this life, the lady did not want to get involved with the imperial family again, because what was happening in the palace was far from a quiet life. There was a knock on the door only to enter without an invitation. Kaiser was called to an important conversation, being in a good mood. Looking at the swords in the hands of his girlfriend, the guy asks why she needs this. From that day forward, they would conduct special classes at night to further improve their blade skills. Looking at the hand clutching the weapon, the man quietly asks about the conditions of the training. For some reason, he did not see Leonard, who was usually somewhere nearby, trying to complete his next task. Putting her foot forward, the girl promises that now everything will change. She will teach her friend dirty, sneaky techniques that she cannot show her brother due to her principles. Without having time to say anything, the young man notices how the girl begins to move, starting to attack from the side with 2 blades, which still remained against one sword. Almost piercing her opponent's shoulder, Helena gives him time to jump to the side and have time to recover. The battle is just beginning, which means that the most interesting things are yet to come. In an attempt to stop his rival, the prince asks how she can attack so vilely, without using any of the logical techniques that she taught him earlier. Pausing for a few seconds to answer the question, the blonde reminds the young man that she promised to teach him the sneaky techniques that will now become part of his training. Now the princess has the power to cut the guy from the back with a sword if she wants, so it's worth trying to defend yourself so as not to get hurt and fail in the duel. Without answering anything, the brunette asks why Helena has 2 swords. They are absolutely no match for one, considering they were only made recently. Rushing into battle again, the girl screams that she needs to be called a master, considering that they are right in the middle of a sparring lesson, which, if mistakes are made, could cost lives. You need to memorize maneuvers with your body and not through training, which will still have its importance. The blonde didn't learn this from the master either, because while working as a mercenary, the others helped her learn it. It is probably even difficult for the young man to defend himself, which is immediately noticeable to the naked eye. He tries his best, but without knowing the enemy's next move, he simply loses before his eyes. A frantic scream escapes from the mouth, which makes you want to cover your ears, which cannot bear to listen to something like that. Heiress did not injure her friend in any way, but she did her job. Moving one hand to the side, the blonde runs the second blade straight along the body, almost touching every piece of clothing. Looking skeptically at the student, the beauty notifies him that he has died. The battle is over, and if it were a real fight, he would no longer be alive because of the attacker with the best knowledge in dirty techniques. Kaiser looks at her friend in surprise, trying to project everything that happened. Obviously, the guy has never before encountered the murderous lust that will one day overtake him. Lowering the blades, the lady offers to do the job again. If a guy is afraid and turns away, trying to save his life, he definitely won't be able to win, thereby putting himself in danger. This time, waiting for the enemy to take the sword out of its sheath, the blonde begins to attack again, turning around with speed and jumping from side to side, making the task and the move to victory almost impossible. The guy puts the weapon forward, thereby blocking the movement of the blades towards his face, which definitely should not have been damaged. As the girl thought, the enemy defeats her by force, because after all, he has abilities, which of course cannot be denied in any case. Everything would be much simpler if the princess was going to teach the guy techniques, but since combat remains forbidden, she turns the sword in the other direction to make the next attack. One of the blades is with the handle facing the young man, and the second is still moving forward with its sharp side. They can't stop, but the man seems speechless. Forcing the opponent to fall to the floor and cower, the master again puts the sword towards him, saying that he would die again if he were in the midst of a real fight. Looking from under his brows, the young man breathes heavily, trying to psych himself up to say something. His gaze remains just as beautiful. It contains hostility and fortitude that cannot be broken. Such a picture is something special, but it is definitely impossible to kill a person with just the strength of your spirit when you are attacked from all sides. Until now, only Helena was capable of killing the enemy, despite the fact that everything should have been completely the opposite. The young man should be the one who will kill his girlfriend if necessary to do this. Crawling back a few steps in horror, the brunette asks why he should kill his master. It doesn't have any logical ending, despite the fact that she is trying to convey something. Leaning over, the girl reminds her of the promise to make this boy an emperor. In her past life, Dante was able to survive and become an empress only because she destroyed her brothers and sisters who were thinking about murder. This is the only correct way. Virgo cannot abandon her student, so she is going to take responsibility for her words. Standing up again and picking up his sword, the man suggests starting again. Smirking, the opponent stands opposite. This is exactly the approach that everyone who wants to achieve something should have, going ahead over the heads of their rivals and enemies. All summer, the couple engaged in prohibited training, which was carried out at different times of the day. Beauty began to notice progress, but also regression in the relationship between the prince and Agathe. As usual, leaving the training room, the master promises that he will add something more to the training plan that she will draw up today. He handles everything well, so this will be a good start. The maid standing outside glares angrily at Kaiser, as if he stole something that belonged to her without asking permission. There is a certain anger in the gaze. The man also doesn't lag behind, glaring at his opponent, It shows that it would be a joy to get rid of the maiden who was getting in the way. The battle with glances became something ordinary, but as usual it was interrupted only by the mistress leaving for another room, calling a god after her, who tried to keep up with the blonde as quickly as possible. Turning around, the girl, as if in the end, sticks out her tongue, making it clear that she is truly better than everyone else the guy could ever meet, because she is close to Helena. Agoth was even able to stand up to the Emperor's son, which was not even surprising because Fresca saw the potential of this lady from the very beginning. While in the living room to relax, the princess again listens to complaints from the maid, who, while pouring tea, continues to shout about how much she does not like Kaiser, who is behaving strangely. The brunette clearly sees the prince's intentions to monopolize the mistress, who remains unable to defend herself. Unfortunately, lines can be drawn because these two say about the same thing. The young man also spoke for several days about the fact that he did not like Agathe at all, who wanted to monopolize her. Helena hurries to calm her worries, because with her character she can get anyone, but she will never belong to anyone not of her own free will. The brunette understands this, so she always tries to remain loyal, but she is hampered by jealousy from how the three of her friends conduct their classes. Freezing with a mug of tea right at her mouth, the blonde looks intently at her interlocutor, who seems quite serious in her stories and statements. It turns out that what happens in class can look quite fun, not taking into account the fact that Fresca drives the students to the last drop of strength. Making the girl feel inferior was definitely not on the list of tasks for His Highness, so smiling, the Duchess invites her interlocutor to start fencing. Sadly lowering her head, the brunette remembers her status because building a logical chain, it becomes clear that this is impossible. Instead of agreeing with Agathe, the blonde only says that nothing is impossible for her, which means that the girl will have her chance to study. At any moment, the princess can try to send the maid to the fencing academy for precise training, which will take place over many years. Falling to her knees, the maid begins to sob because she wants to learn how to use a sword from her mistress, who immediately says that this is impossible. Clutching Helena's legs, the brunette bursts into tears, asking that she be allowed to at least watch Mr. Leonard, and then she can begin training on her own without causing any problems. Sighing, the princess notices that the former street child now looks even more desperate than when they had a fight in that very alley a few months ago. The idea overall doesn't sound like a bad idea, because when the prince leaves, his brother will need an opponent, and Helena's combat level is too high to fight a student who can't stand it. Perhaps, if you take up training and teach Agoth everything that she herself knows, then the lady will turn out to be at least some kind of average opponent who can withstand in battle. Looking down at the girl, who is trying to calm down, the Duchess suggests starting training while Kaiser is away, who will leave the estate very soon. The conditions remain exactly the same simple, but Agathe will need to catch up with Leonard in just a year. If this does not happen, the maid will be sent to the academy for further training. The girl's eyes light up with a bright, joyful fire. She couldn't believe her luck, because the girl decided to get such help, which would definitely help in promoting her skills. Jumping up from her seat, the lady begins to circle around the hall, shouting that she will try until she dies, even if she is asked not to do this for her own safety. Turning around and running away, Agathe continues to rejoice uncontrollably. Feelings suggest that if this continues, the princess will be able to open her own fencing school. It was at the moment when everything happened that the very words of the father came to mind that one day the daughter might find herself in a situation that would be difficult for her to cope with, and which would then drag her down. After the conversation, nothing changed, and the relationship of the couple, who hated each other, remained exactly the same as in the beginning, which added to the problems. Everything flowed at its own pace along its own course, so the girl continued to train Kaiser and made sure that he would not be killed in some dark alley because of his thirst for power and the throne. At the moment when the guy began to achieve success, the lady realized that her role was completed. She did everything possible to help the young student achieve heights, and now she must only reap the benefits. After training, the guy was always exhausted, but it was worth it. The princess felt that she was too lazy to study for several hours a day and at night, but it paid off and brought relief. After a while, the last month of the warm summer was over. Kaiser returned back to the imperial palace, leaving his brother and sister alone as usual to continue their training. Appearing in front of the carriage to say goodbye to a friend they wouldn't see for the next 9 months, the couple gathers to do just that. The blonde does not want to admit her mistakes, but it is worth saying that she was too careless and again lived, making too much effort. After autumn began, everything returned to its place. The lady calmly trained young students and lounged around with Agot and her brother, who always wanted to help her in this. Life was like a fairy tale that never ended. This rhythm of everyday life suits a person like Dante, despite the fact that many considered her lazy. Winter came and brought with it problems that helped vacations and plans burst like a soap bubble. A woman came to the castle and introduced herself as Rowena Evergreen. The girl did not immediately say why she came, pausing. Leonard clarified why she had arrived, because it seemed as if they had never met before. As it turned out, the envoy was sent by His Majesty Prince Kaiser, who conveyed with her some message that could not tolerate delay. Taking something out of her messenger bag, the lady carefully hands over 2 letters with the seal of the kingdom. The man asked to hand over a paper that contained what needed to be signed. Initially, it was planned that Viscount Noct would come, but the prince prudently said that if he sent a person he knew, the princess would simply run away. If the blonde had only known that the prince had sent Rowena, she would definitely not have come to the meeting, especially since over time it turned out that the invitation was to the coronation of Kaiser. A few days ago, as usual, there was a booth in the duchy due to the fact that friends were actively discussing the coronation, which this year they are holding together in the winter at the beginning of the year. As it turns out, the castle is planning to hold the transfer of the title and the birthday at the same time, which coincides. It seems that His Highness personally asked his father for this fate. Turning her head from side to side, the lady pretends that, of course, she knew when her friend's birthday was. The prince's middle name is Winter, which adds even more meaning. If Kaiser had heard this, he would have cried. In any case, it did not matter because they were still too young, which means they could not attend such events, which were prohibited. This was, of course, not because the girl was lazy. The lady was going to spend the whole day in the absence of adults, doing whatever she wanted without any worries, so going to the capital because of the crown prince seemed like a bad idea. Putting the letter back into the envelope, the lady hands it to Evergreen. She's really sorry, but now is not the best time to make her debut in high society so early. The brunette nods, saying that the prince foresaw even this. He conveyed that if the girl said this, it would be better to read the invitation more carefully. Not understanding what exactly they want from her, the blonde only lifts her eyebrow sarcastically, hoping that very soon she will be able to solve the riddle. Grabbing the sheet of paper again, the lady begins to actively run along the lines of the neatly written invitation. The first time, she didn't find anything unusual. One note was added at the end of the paper. If the master does not show up, then at this event, Winter will inform everyone about Helena, who likes to touch other people's thighs. The paper immediately turns into a lump. Jumping up from the sofa and running to the fireplace, the young lady throws a scrap of letter into the fire as best she can, looking at how only ashes remain. Leonard was the only one who completely did not understand what had happened. Looking angrily at her interlocutors, the blonde reminds them that she cannot go anywhere without an invitation, even if she really wants to. The couple silently watching the madness does not find the right words to say anything or somehow comment on what is happening. Not intending to wait any longer, Rowena pulls out several more letters, which contain the same text, supplemented by an invitation. His Highness foresaw everything that would happen, so he ordered many copies to be made. Those in the room freeze in shock at how cunning the guy was, even with ordinary invitations that didn't mean that much. Clenching her hand into a fist with all her might, the blonde talks in a killer voice about how she is looking forward to meeting His Highness at this wonderful event. The princess intends to go to the coronation and meet Kaiser in person in order to kill him and reprimand him for his resourcefulness, which ruined her day off. Rowena seems calm, however. Adjusting her glasses, she talks about how the prince is waiting for their arrival. According to him, they are among the most important guests. Giving some command, the girl calls several more maids into the room. It so happened that Evergreen would prepare the prince and princess for their debut in the capital, because she was tasked with it as the one in charge. There is very little time left, so instead of sewing, the woman brought and prepared several necessary dresses in advance. The couple can look at the catalog as well as the titles of everyone invited to the event to memorize each one. For the ideal debut of his friends, His Highness ordered to help financially and spiritually too. The Duke's permission is also already in place, so there are just a few finishing touches left. With the appearance of the lady, the plans were really destroyed, making it clear that this would not end well. The girl and Leonard were taken to the hall to take measurements. While the princess did not understand anything and blindly followed Rowena's instructions, the day of the coronation arrived. The capital was filled with many people. Father and mother also promised to be present. They planned to stay for the ceremony while the children could return home after the banquet. This will be the first public appearance from the Duchess and Duke, so it is worth talking less and listening as much as possible. Nodding, each of the young people agrees to the conditions set. The only disturbing detail remains the holiday itself. The couple thought their parents would be there for them. As it turned out, the family needed to visit a lot of important places during the day, so, promising to meet them a little later at a country house, they left their children right in front of the palace. The Fresca family is not personally involved in politics, but they are still a ducal family, so aristocrats definitely need to appear in all places at the same time. It seems that such meetings are something empty, but this is not so. Nobles do not just meet briefly and engage in idle talk, but exchange information and create factions. Although the couple are close friends with His Highness, their parents did not force them to attend the coronation, knowing how long such a matter would drag on. Leonard wonders whether they will meet with him today or not, because it seems that his friend is busy greeting members of the political world. The Virgin only nods, because when her coronation took place, no one even came close to her. Perhaps the reason was completely different. The ceremony took place immediately after the repression of relatives, so some of the nobility were most likely simply afraid of the Empress. The lady sat on the throne in an unusual way, so she influenced the outcome of events. There was only one person left, Iles Grey, who invited Dante to dance with him because he knew that she was a good person. When the princess was embarrassed by the too uncomfortable atmosphere, the guy extended his helping hand, which made Renatus incredibly happy. In those days, what happened even made the lady's heart beat faster. Of course, now we could forget about all the exciting moments. The blonde promises herself to meet Kaiser before they go back home. Apparently, Helena really wants to meet His Highness too much. She had to travel too far in order not to get anything new, realizing that the prince simply wouldn't even talk to them now. Most importantly, the girl set herself the goal of taking revenge on the scoundrel, who decided to use forbidden methods to lure her friend to the coronation. She was no longer interested. Smiling as if nothing had happened, the princess says that there can be no other reason for this. She just wanted to talk without assault. Extending his hand towards his sister, Leonard asks if she really likes him more than anyone else in the world. This kind of beginning of a conversation cannot bode well. Looking into the eyes of her interlocutor, Helena nods without hesitation, saying that he is truly the best in the world. She never considered him an ordinary person because of the kindness that lay hidden in his soul. This time, what was said was true. Combining her past and present life, the maiden could not remember anyone as kind and beautiful as Leonard, who had always been exactly like that. Walking inside the castle, the beauty decides to postpone revenge on Kaiser only for the sake of a good and worthy debut for her brother. He definitely deserved a good ending. In any case, the day did not promise to be too difficult. The blonde will remain in the corner and then quietly leave, because in the previous reality she had enough of social receptions. There are too many aristocrats in the castle who, one after another, are trying to get inside as quickly as possible so as not to miss anything vital. The first 30 minutes passed quite calmly, but nothing is so simple, so exactly after a while a glass of wine was thrown onto the ladies, which spread like a scarlet stain on their snow-white dress. Raising the hem a little higher, the princess looks in shock at what happened to the fabric. The girl, on the contrary, talks about how sorry she is, because her hand twitched. A beauty with bright wheat hair and blue eyes puts her hand to her mouth in horror. She didn't mean to push too hard, but she thinks the lady definitely needs to change her clothes. Skeptically examining the lady who appeared as if from underground, the girl sighs. They still won't leave her alone, even if she tries with all her might to hide from attention. The celebration has already begun a long time ago. The usual techniques have not changed after several hundred years, which could not but rejoice, but it also has its side effects. People gather around the princesses trying to offer them some of their mugs. Some want Helena to join the reading club, and others want the Duke to invest in a business that the other Duke's family is starting. They didn't want to leave Leonard alone either. The girls surrounded the prince, talking about how much they enjoyed watching the last competition, in which the blonde won again. People were not going to retreat. Almost shaking with exhaustion and anger, the girl says that she is really glad to meet so many wonderful people who mean a lot to her. There is no denying that the princess was simply fed up. Turning towards her brother, Fresca realizes that he is doing much better than expected, soaking up all the attention. This only meant that Dante could start trying to get out. Carefully addressing her acquaintances standing nearby, the blonde makes a tired face, saying that this is her first time at this event. It's a little difficult for her, so it would be best to go and rest. The princes crowding around begin, as one, to offer to go with them to the restroom or some other quiet place. They want to help, but at the moment the girl needs something completely different. This is a difficult situation, and Fresca arises for the first time in a long time. Everyone has good offers that there is no reason to refuse, which drives the girl into a stupor. Leonard, who appeared at the most opportune moment, extends his hand to his sister. As her escort, he himself will be able to fulfill his duty, thereby helping the girl go to the restroom. Smiling, the blonde nods at Helena, as if trying to say that he understands why she wants to leave, so he can definitely help her with this. Walking into the hall, the lady sits down on the sofa thanks to Leonard. She had long wanted to escape from there, just to sit in silence, and the excuse still could not find itself. Changing the topic, the guy asks exactly if no one dared to touch his friend, who at the moment could also turn out to be helpless. This made him a little nervous. Nodding, the lady says that everything was in order. Even the angelic young man sometimes uses dirty words towards people who might have behaved badly. It looks like Helena is the only culprit. The boy could not learn such vocabulary from someone because in the duchy, only Fresca uses this. Smiling, the brother promises that if anyone dares to touch the lady, he will get rid of everyone. Remaining completely calm, the young man instills fear with the help of his almost indifference. The guy leaves to get something to drink. The beauty just waves her hand after her, hoping that at least now she will be able to sit in silence until the end of the event, and then calmly leave. If a man goes out into the hall, he will probably be held hostage for some time by the ladies who used to be around him. Now there is only peace and quiet. The comfort ended as quickly as it began due to women's voices calling out to the princess. She opened one eye to see who had arrived. In fact, mostly those who walk in such groups are not the best people. They have their downsides to what they do, so you should be wary of them. The blonde looks searchingly into the eyes of her interlocutor. She was looking for the princess, so now, without wasting the opportunity, she introduces herself as Lady Ulrica Bronte. The gears are quickly spinning in her head, forcing the beauty to think about what family Ulrica belongs to. Obviously, this is a relative of the Duchy of Balor, which is the family of the favorite. The woman had been in conflict with Prince Kaiser for a long time. The man prevented his favorite from receiving the title of empress, and she, in turn, continued to be against his becoming crown prince. Both possessed unimaginable power, which was constantly compared, but just recently they made some kind of deal, and this year the prince became heir to the throne. There is no way these girls can be on good terms with Kaiser, but then the question remains why they came to the coronation. The lady clearly has some business that they don't want to reveal. There are rumors that the lady is friends with Winter, who considers her his best friend and mentor, which is true. Bursting into sparkling laughter, Bronte cannot stop. It seems as if someone told her a funny joke that made her want to laugh non-stop. Asking for forgiveness, Ulrica says that she did not expect to hear about the rumor that came from the character. Usually aristocrats can exchange a few words with the prince, but no one has ever boasted of friendship. It turns out that there are such people. These babies are very annoying to the princess, who still cannot find the strength to turn around and leave without leaving a scandal behind her. The princess cannot be one of the close people, because usually such people from the village are simple-minded. Laughter and snatches of words reach the ears for only a few minutes, but this can be considered self-indulgence, because none of them carry a sword or add poison. Ulrica looks worriedly into the lady's eyes. She says this is all just because she is very worried about Helena, who, most likely, is not able to make a decision herself. Leaning closer to the heroine, the blonde asks her to realize her place. All stories remain empty because Fresca has nothing to do with the prince. The girl spread similar rumors, but came in a country dress. Such an outfit will definitely disgrace His Highness, making him blush in front of the guests. After all that has been said, the young lady moves away and accidentally spills wine from her glass, leaving a scarlet stain on the snow-white hem. She did this not by accident, which becomes clear after the words. The lady's hand just twitched, so she cannot admit her guilt. She is ashamed that she did this, so the princess will urgently need to go change her clothes. Smiling as if nothing had happened, the blonde offers to go into the room with her. She brought a spare dress and now it will find its new owner. Examining the spot, which has increased in size, the lady sighs. The rest of those present ask to accept the kindness of Yulika, who, it seems, offers to change clothes from the bottom of her heart. Obviously, the other dress will turn out to be terrible, but if she refuses, the girl will brand Helena as a soulless person. Getting up, the lady accepts help, saying that the girl needs to wipe her hand. Stretching out her palm, the beauty grabs the wrist of the blonde, who does not have time to come to her senses due to the speed of her movements, which are set on something. The next second, the entire contents of the glass flies straight into Bronte's face. She screams, but cannot say anything because a glass of scarlet liquid splashes in her face. Her friends rush to the blonde, shouting that the princess allows herself too much. Her character is bad, but it all started with Yulika, who behaved impudently. Looking at the girl, who is now wet along with her dress, the heroine asks for forgiveness. Parodying Yulika, Helena says that her hand twitched. They are generous ladies, so they can definitely understand the situation. The lady will need to put on the same spare dress that she brought with her. There is no limit to joy, because now it will save the whole situation, while the girl conveys information to His Highness. Startling, the blonde asks again in surprise. She can't believe that they're talking about Kaiser again, who wasn't even here. The expression on his face amused Dante. Carefully smoothing out the folds on the hem of the dress, the lady says that Winter himself selected the dress. In fact, it was his servant, but in fact everything could be considered one and the same. Addressing all the ladies by name, the girl prepares to take her leave. It was time to leave, even if she didn't really want to forget the surprised expressions on their faces that had helped give her a good laugh. Smiling, the blonde thanks Yulika again, saying that she will remember the kindness shown to the Fresca family. Turning away, the lady laughs lightly. The girls turned very pale, thereby causing tenderness and at the same time a grin on the heroine's face. Looking at Bronte one last time, Helena chuckles and then turns and walks away. She hopes that very soon they will meet again, but another time in a better environment. Bowing, the lady tries not to show it, because there are more than enough problems for today. Now all she can do is leave the castle and go in search of His Highness. This will become a good memory from childhood as something insignificant and unnecessary, but it would be better not to meet such foolish ladies. Yulika slowly gets up from the ground, dusting off her outfit. Now she has personal scores to settle with Helena Fresca, who today managed to disgrace the aristocrat in front of her friends. Sitting on the sofa, the lady tries to scrub away the stain, which felt twice as large after the girl began her operation to save the fabric. The rag was completely soaked, taking on a scarlet hue that refused to go away. We have to conclude that there is nothing more to do about it, because any efforts will be in vain. Throwing the napkin to the side, the blonde leans back in her chair. She doesn't really care because now she has an excuse not to go out to the guests. The only strange thing is what happened recently. Lady Bronte was definitely up to something because otherwise she would not have even approached the princess, who was not touching anyone. Due to the closeness of Yulika's family with the favorite, their influence was one of the greatest. Even as a margravess, she became very involved in politics, so she seems to have more influence than the Fresca family, who abandoned it. There would be no benefit for such a noble family to pester Helena, who did not even intend to start a conflict out of the blue. The memory of when the lady approached the princess, talking about some rumors that she herself was spreading, pops up in my head again. The lady urgently asked to stop talking about the fact that they were friends, because His Highness would receive a huge blow to his reputation from a girl in such a terrible dress. Perhaps all the attempts were made because she likes Kaiser. It's a little cute, but the expression of jealousy almost hurt Helena herself, which she didn't exactly like. There is a rustling sound behind the door, then another knock. Gray, who had been waiting for almost the entire event, finally found a moment to chat with his friend, so he arrived at the hall. After all, the maiden herself came to the castle to look at His Highness during the coronation, so there was no point in refusing this. Turning her gaze to the open window, the lady noticed that it was snowing outside again. It seems that winter is coming into its own, so intending to watch this, the maiden passes further through the window. The hand reaches forward on its own, grabbing the window sash, which turns out to be open even on the other side. It's cool outside, as expected. Looking at the snow-covered city, Dante sighs. The words are firmly stuck in my head, but in order to understand whether a village dress is or not, you need to wear them often, which the princess, of course, does not do. In her past life, the Duchess was not even interested in clothes and jewelry. Before becoming an empress, the girl wandered the streets and battlefields, and after becoming an empress, she became more common, even more often than before. Renatus does not have a single good memory of the imperial palace, which is not surprising, but for some reason she still misses those times. Thoughts are interrupted by the warmth that suddenly envelops the master. A man's voice joyfully says that he has finally found what he has been looking for so long throughout the castle. Turning her head, the blonde incomprehensibly asks how Kaiser ended up in this particular room, at this particular time. By all laws of logic, he should have continued to receive guests outside. Everything turned out to be much simpler than it seemed, because the girl was not visible. So I had to ask someone who knew, and they said that the princess was in this room. Pointing to her dress, the lady says that her clothes are a little dirty. The man again thought that his friend was avoiding everything and everyone because she was lazy, which was somewhat true. Laughing, the brunette notices that this is more like the usual behavior of the beauty he has known for so long. It seems that the main character of the party would rather not be anywhere other than the coronation hall. However, the young man had already managed to greet everyone and then leave for only 10 minutes. After that letter, the acquaintance was going to scold Kaiser for the way he behaved, but looking at the tired face, which probably had not slept for several days, one can only remain silent. Now, you can feel the guy becoming the crown prince because he finally started putting in more effort. In addition to all this, the man became taller than the girl, which was incredibly annoying. Deciding to do something strange, the brunette bends down, pinning the master to the wall with his hand. Now their faces are at the same level, allowing them to speak. Stretching out her palm and resting it on her cheek, the girl screams that it's too close. The man is not going to kneel, but it would be better to return to his original position. Joking a little, the girl says that it would be good to do what he suggests. She always likes to look down on someone, so the guy can happily bend the knee. Exhaling, the young man smiles again. In all this turmoil, he really missed such light moments and jokes from his friend, who helped him a lot, cheering him up. Getting down on one knee, the brunette asks how the master sees him now. Obviously, the girl should be satisfied with how the whole outcome turned out. Glad that Winter still has the strength to joke, the princess shows with gestures that she absolutely likes everything. If someone sees the crown prince in such a position, they will be scared. However, looking into the eyes, the lady will definitely not be able to say something like that, so warm palms fall on the man's face. Without removing her hands, the blonde quietly congratulates Kaiser on his 18th birthday and thanks him for being born. This time, the congratulations turn out to be more than sincere. Falling silent, the maiden expects at least some reaction from her ward, but instead the silence lingers in the room. The man was covered with scarlet paint, which was almost unnoticeable because of his palms, which still did not let go of the young man's face, not allowing him to get any overview of what was happening. The couple stands in a strange position, absolutely in complete silence. No one is able to say anything or move, because such a congratulation was unexpected. Asking her friend to say something so that the maiden does not die of embarrassment, she blushes. Gently taking the friend's palm into his own, the young man quietly thanks. He came here because he wanted to hear those very words. Exhaling, the princess reminds the prince that as soon as he enters the hall, he can hear a million more such congratulations. Bowing his head closer to the master, the guy says that these words are meaningful only when they are said from the lips of the princess, who wanted to congratulate him so much that she forgot about her rule of not expressing emotions. Taking the girl's hand again, the man comes even closer, looking somewhere down. He was born only for Helena, who has now become the closest person to him. The cheeks become filled with color again, making the young man a little embarrassed. In the voice of the future emperor, one can hear the desire to burst into tears, which will very soon take over. Snuggling close to her friend, the blonde inhales his scent. The girl could only hug that very close person, without whom she could no longer imagine her life. The stubborn and lonely student recognized his teacher as someone so important that it made him feel much better. Words spoken a moment ago will not be forgotten even after years. After the gala reception ended, the brother and sister had 3 free days to spend as they saw fit, so Helena, of course, was going to spend them at home and sleep. Leonard apparently planned to visit many houses, as the couple's parents do. At the reception, the young man received many letters with invitations from various aristocrats. Instead of accepting invitations, the blonde remembers that he has long wanted to go on an excursion to the knightly detachment. They arrived in the capital, which means they can finally visit the cherished place. The guy is even more of an exemplary student than the princess previously thought about him. Skipping classes, he wanted to visit the academy, thereby still attending some training. In this case, it turns out that the estate will soon become completely empty, leaving Helena in her care all alone. This meant that it would be possible to sleep and eat enough. The plans were again destroyed literally in the second half of the same day, because Kaiser appeared at the castle, who, greeting the master, announced that he had arrived to visit. Getting out of bed, the blonde sighs heavily. I want this to all turn out to be a bad dream from which I can wake up. Shouting at the prince, the girl asks why the future emperor is so free. However, it is rude to say such a thing to a person who has not even slept properly in recent days. In fact, the young man heard that Leonard had gone to look at the knightly detachment, so it immediately became clear to him that his acquaintance would simply be lying around and philandering. This bastard turns a deaf ear to everything they tell him. The guy was so kind that he decided to take the time to come and have a lot of fun with his girlfriend. He was bored alone, so company would definitely be nice. Pushing the prince out of the room, the blonde promises that she will feel good even alone. It seems the lady is going to end her congratulations with just words. No longer wanting to listen to anything, the young man diligently resists so that he is not thrown out of the room. This will be in lieu of a birthday gift, so no refusals will be accepted. Looking menacingly at her interlocutor, the lady remembers that her acquaintance never saw the gift. It seemed that he didn't even really need it, but it still wasn't good to refuse. Asking what exactly Kaiser wants, the girl promises that very soon she can give him a gift so that he can finally calm down. Speaking about what he needs, the brunette begins to list that the lady could build him a country estate in the city and near the seashore, which would be quite enough. In the end, the lady agreed anyway, because the same bait as usual worked like a charm. Sending the servants to rest, His Highness assures them that everything will be in perfect order. The Crown Prince decided that he was now omnipotent, so he sent his guards and servants home. The master raised the boy too strong and now fearless. Grabbing his friend's hand, the young man invites Helena to move forward to choose what they would like to do together on the estate. Resisting, the lady tries to find out why she was grabbed by the hand. All this is necessary so that your friend does not run away during a walk, but stays nearby all the time. There is no need to worry, but you can no longer believe in it, because Kaiser remembers very well how before, at the festival a long time ago, the princess simply disappeared, running into an alley. The discussion is over because the blonde has nothing more to say. The prince seems happy with his job, especially since he will now be holding hands with Helena. Looking at the young man, who breaks into a smile from the memories, the girl sighs. Today, so be it. She will let him do whatever he wants, but next time he won't get away with it so easily. Pointing to a bakery, the guy suggests heading there, and since this is a birthday present, the girl nods in agreement, intending to follow all the instructions. The maid puts down a mug of tea and a kettle, which are filled with hot liquid. Now, all that remains is to start drinking tea and the sweets that you have just purchased. Turning to Kaiser, the blonde wants to ask some important question, thereby distracting the man from looking at the ceiling. For some reason, today it seemed to the girl that all her actions were for her, although everything should have been quite the opposite. Today was not Helena's birthday, but Winter's, so the injustice must be corrected. Taking another sip of the liquid, the man says that he apparently doesn't notice any difference. He prefers to give something to his friends, but since they left because of the emperor, he is also obliged to buy something. Smirking, the brunette says that as a prince, he only uses what is made by great masters, so he doesn't need it at all. Turning to laughter, the young man can no longer restrain himself from the expression on Heiress's face. One can understand from her that she was disgusted by the fact that they were literally mocking her, albeit as a joke. Breaking off a piece of the pie, which seems to melt in your mouth, the lady once again clarifies her question. Perhaps the young man wants to buy something, despite the way their conversation started. Breaking into a welcoming smile, the young man dreamily says that if only he could, he would definitely buy Helena, who could then spend all her free time with him. Continuing to chew, the blonde watches as her friend bursts out laughing again. It seems he has a few more lives lying around. This guy has become too cunning over the past few years. Previously, when the princess tried to bully the young man, nothing came of it. But over time, everything changed. Perhaps the imperial castle is on bad ground, because the character is getting worse every time. Distracting Helena from her thoughts, the guy asks about yesterday's reception, which, it seems, was not bad at all. The girl doesn't know at all, because she first spent 15 minutes outside and then simply hid in the room. Virgo didn't even meet anyone. It was quite in her style, but sometimes you need to leave your comfort zone to find new acquaintances and friends. Once again thinking about what he can ask next, the young man clarifies whether it's true that no men touched the lady, even after she herself went into the room. Starting the phrase that everything is fine, the blonde suddenly stumbles. Such a stop makes it clear that something is clearly wrong, and most likely someone dared to touch her. Jumping up from his seat, the brunette once again, in horror, clarifies what was said. It's not that bad, but perhaps the lady managed to make friends with the daughter of the Bronte family, who herself molested her. The blonde tried to do everything possible to force Dante to leave the event, or at least bring him out into the open. All attempts were failed. Freezing, the brunette glares at his interlocutor. He associated Countess with something not so pleasant after all the strife and conflicts that were wrapped around the favorite. Falling back into the chair again, the young man sighs loudly. It seems that he expected to hear anything except this hated surname, which he no longer wanted to even remember. The face became noticeably sadder, hiding those very true joyful emotions that were previously available for viewing. The prince seemed to want to turn around and leave, to remain in his thoughts. Noticing such a drastic change, the blonde gasps, realizing that she said something completely stupid. The Bronte family is on the side of the prince's opponent, given that the favorite really caused quite a few problems, even after the signed peace agreement. Deciding to quickly change the subject, the girl calls out to Kaiser, saying that she has something, and she would like to give this thing to the young man who deserved his gift. There is a snow-white box on the table, along with a tied flower bow. The girl admits her mistake, because she should have done this during the reception, but the gift itself was not very good compared to the others, so it would be better to give it now. Grabbing the bundle as if it were some kind of miracle, the young man cannot believe his eyes. Asking a million questions, he constantly clarifies whether it is really his, and whether it can definitely be revealed to him. Nodding, the Virgin warns that the present is extremely modest, so you shouldn't hope for some expensive clothes or jewelry that you definitely won't have. A scarf made of dark green fabric, more reminiscent of a swamp, is revealed from the box. It is made of warm material that is just right for winter. Freezing, the brunette looks in fascination at what he has wanted to get for so long. There seems to be pure delight on his face, which makes him move on. Looking at the thing, the guy comments on Helena's knitting abilities, because this piece of material looks like a rag of rags, which might even be a shame to wear anywhere. Stretching her hand forward and swearing at the same time, the beauty asks to return the rightful thing to the owner, because this is how it should be, but the friend just throws the scarf over his shoulder. Stroking the scarf, the brunette happily says that he likes this gift much more than anything else. This, of course, is not true, because at the reception, the guy received a much larger variety of jewelry. Saying sincere thanks, the boy objects, because everything that was given at the reception was for the whole kingdom, and this thing was just for him personally, especially given by his best friend. Due to the fact that Helena spent quite a lot of time with Kaiser, it immediately becomes clear that he is happy. This drives me into a slight stupor, because the heroine did not even hope for gratitude. The beauty could not even think that the young man would like an ordinary handmade scarf so much. Opening her mouth in surprise, the lady tries to replay everything that happened in her head. Starting to laugh again, the brunette tries to restrain himself a little so as not to raise strange questions from his acquaintance, who it seems doesn't care at all. Screaming about how much he likes the little thing, the prince does not even pay attention to the murderous expression on his face that the interlocutor sitting opposite him gives him. At first, it may seem that this is all a joke, but the young man likes the scarf so much that he is ready to give his life for it, just to be together all the time. Night fell when it was time for the couple to return back to their home. Unlike the lands of the duchy, which were a province, the capital's night was dazzlingly luxurious, along with many lights. Looking out the window and noticing many reflections outside, the girl examines the buildings that fly by with great speed due to the speed of the carriage. The views were truly worth it and remained consistently beautiful. 500 years ago, the Empress spent countless nights in this city. Sometimes they passed by at work and sometimes just on the street. But now everything seems even more beautiful, adding to the charm that was there before. Kaiser, who volunteered to go with the lady, sits opposite, falling asleep as he goes. He wasn't lying when he said he'd been incredibly tired and exhausted over the past few days, so it was understandable. Trying to wake up the prince, the lady moves a little closer, not understanding what happened. Very soon the carriage will arrive at the estate, which means that there is no more time for sleep. The guy completely switched off, no longer reacting to any words from other people around him. It would be much better if, instead of meeting with his girlfriend, he spent time on the rest that he so richly deserved. Approaching the guy and taking a seat next to him, the blonde gently touches the man on the shoulder. The answer is an inaudible grunt from the side, which makes it clear that the companion will never wake up. Still, the persuasion worked, because the scarlet eyes slowly open, while Winter quietly says Helena's name, as if trying to make sure that the princess is right next to him. Another bump turns fatal as the carriage wheel slips off the scaffolding, sending the couple flying to the other side of the carriage. The servant, who was on the other side, manages to grab the railing, smiling nervously due to such a sudden jump. He also didn't expect it to end this way, so it turned out differently. The young man falls on the girl, pressing his lips to her lips. They do not immediately move away from each other due to the balance, which has become difficult to maintain. The carriage still sways a little from side to side. Jumping to the side, the master quickly came to his senses, realizing what had just happened. Clutching her mouth with her hands, the girl asks for forgiveness many times in order to make amends for the incident. The young man also steps aside, trying to recover as quickly as possible. There is a rough road here, so it turned out that everything did not go according to the plan that was intended. The romantic description definitely doesn't fit the picture, so one could only say that the heroes were almost left without their front teeth. Because of the impact, they were too close to each other, so now they feel pain and embarrassment. Almost starting to cry, the guy backs away, shouting that this doesn't count. He does not give any precise explanation, only continuing to insist that this does not suit him, because no one expected such an ending. Without ever taking her hands away from her face, the girl quietly asks her companion what he is trying to tell her, because such a vague description is clearly not suitable under any circumstances. The prince seemed to dislike the collision very much, which happened very unexpectedly. Until the end of the road, he still could not connect two words into one sentence, continuing to say the same thing. Swinging open the door of the carriage, Helena jumps out of the carriage, not intending to listen to the other excuses of the young man who did not even try to stop her. She will go first so as not to make everyone feel even more awkward. Goosebumps run through your body, making you want to hide somewhere. The incident, it seems, will now remain in the memories for not a very long time, as if reminding of what happened. The servants greet the mistress, who does not react to them in any way, only running at the speed of light into the interior of the estate in order to disappear from view as quickly as possible. Gray, who remains in the carriage, looks into the distance in fascination. What happened no longer seems real, causing the young man to doubt how things will turn out in the future. Right at the entrance, the girl is met by Leonard, who has long since arrived back at the castle. After watching the knights nearby and the academy, he did not linger in the capital, so he immediately returned. Looking at the lady's face in surprise, the boy asks what happened to the young lady's lips. They seem to be swollen, but the justification finds itself. Because the carriage she was riding in was shaking, the maiden fell and bit her lip. Looking down thoughtfully, the blonde also notices how red the girl's face is. It seems she has a cold, so if necessary, the prince can call a doctor. Jumping to the side, the girl tries to hide her embarrassment. I don't want to believe that she is embarrassed because she and Kaiser had a collision that meant absolutely nothing. Turning around and leaving the room, the blonde asks her not to bother her because she needs to rest and recover as quickly as possible in order to feel better. On his way out, Dante looks at his brother for the last time. She is ashamed that she was able to deceive a loved one, but it is impossible to say that today she and the prince touched lips. Gray's facial expressions resurface in his mind. He seemed confused and upset that the incident had dented his face, making him look less like an emperor. Walking into the room, the girl falls onto the bed with a heavy exhalation. She would like to quickly return to the Count's estate, where she would not have to meet with Winter on an ongoing basis. It was necessary to get at least a few days of rest in complete solitude. 2 days later, one of the heaviest snowfalls began in the capital, which made it clear that the plan to return home had failed. The Virgin did not want to believe that she would now have to stay in this estate for a few more days or a week. The servant, who, as usual, came to complain to the princess, says that he explained to His Highness that it was necessary to conduct a rehearsal for the speech to the throne in the afternoon. But in the first half of the day, Gray practiced fencing and came all sweaty. Not understanding what the problem is, the brunette leans back on his chair, expressing his dissatisfaction. It was just a rehearsal, which doesn't mean anything, but you have to wear a costume that can get dirty. Sipping tea, the blonde tries to remain neutral. Because of the snowfall in the morning, the couple was locked in the estate, so everyone kept throwing all their problems onto the princess. As luck would have it, Hamilton arrived precisely at the moment when Leonard, who was always assenting, was not there. The young man again received an invitation from the main knightly detachment, so he promised to return not so soon. Normally the girl would not even hesitate because of the Viscount's complaints, because for him it was a common thing, but today everything changed. Looking menacingly at Kaiser, the beauty skeptically repeats that he is to blame. So Noct has every right to complain about the prince who does not respect the work of others. Virgo does not know all the details, but the fact that the Viscount is right becomes obvious. Focusing on the person sitting next to him infuriates the Emperor, despite the fact that he always tries to remain indifferent and calm. Starting to cry, Hamilton takes out a handkerchief that was already prepared for tears. As expected, the princess understood and supported him because she is a generous person. Trying to support the Viscount, the girl continues to assent, while the guy talks about how difficult it is for him. Sometimes I just wanted to give up everything, to which the brunette reminds me that no one ever stopped him. Remembering an incident that happened a few days ago, Noct says that the prince rushed him and then simply disappeared. Perhaps someone beat him, judging by how swollen his lips were. This time, the couple unanimously shouted at the servant, who froze without the right to say anything. He is asked to be quiet and not talk about what happened. Asking why they both scream so much, the man thinks for a second because if you think like that, then there is also a wound on the princess's lip, which looks extremely strange and similar. Silencing the Viscount again, the couple does not allow the poor guy to even get a word in edgewise. He hadn't said anything yet, but he got what he deserved in advance, just hoping that next time no one would touch him, even if necessary. This day was a complete failure because Dante felt discomfort, which is why she overreacted. You can't get caught by a chatty man like Noct, so the maiden tells him that there are monastery councils in this estate. The brunette jumps in place. Such a valuable book is worth a lot of money, especially since these are related records of the monastery, transcribed in elegant handwriting. The man always dreamed of seeing something like this. Inviting the guy to come with her in order to show everything, the blonde points to the door. This would be a great honor for the teacher's family, because he had never been able to see such a scripture with his own eyes before.